Morning, Deputy Minister, DG, and our entire team, the IEC chairperson, all commissioners and the executive, Government Printing Works CEO, and the entire team. We are today going to receive reports on the budget on the three entities, the IEC, Government Printing Works, and Home Affairs. We are going to interact, and members are going to be given opportunity to reflect on the presentation that will be made. We have just concluded the report on the Electoral Amendment Bill, as you are aware, all of us, and want to again thank members of the committee for having demonstrated collective work during our deliberations since there's been tabling to Parliament, and also the stakeholders who have been able to be with the committee to assist the committee to navigate on the issues. We have expressed different views as we've been interacting on the Electoral Amendment Bill, and also consensus on some of the areas, and that is healthy in terms of the discourse we ought to interact in the committee. We must, in earnest, Mr. Matonsi and the team, other members, begin to interface with the consequential amendment so that we're able to assist and fully support the Independent Electoral Commission to prepare their elections, our elections for 2024. I'm fully aware that there's now launched the campaign awareness to mobilize all citizens who qualify to vote, to register. And as members of the committee and political parties, who must also participate in mobilizing all those that are qualifying to vote in both the provincial and local government elections. Deputy Minister, I'm fully aware that there was an incident in Ilim last week in your office where our staff were on hostage, and I think that is a matter perhaps you may need to highlight. We are raising this point because of the safety of our people, both the clients and the staff. I'm advised that there's a foreign national who got all our members in Ilim Office of Home Affairs hostage. And I think that you'll take us into confidence on what are the issues related to that. Members who are going to request to get presentation at once, so that we're interacting on all when we're going to comment or raise questions to all these 4 reports from Home Affairs, Government Printing Works, and the IEC. Thereafter, members will comment on the Border Management Authority, Morning Commissioner, Mashia Pata, and all the commissioners. So that's how we're going to deal with that. And we'll then, after members have commented on the issues and raise matters, we'll then request the stakeholders, Home Affairs, IEC, BMA, and the Government Printing Works to comment or respond on the issues. You are going to be allocated, time has been allocated to brief the committee on the budget. Mr. Matonsi, I'm going to request you to run on the second item of apologies, and I will request the Deputy Minister to introduce the team that are in attendance, and you'll delegate in terms of the stakeholders. Mr. Matonsi?
Morning, Chair. Morning, everyone. From my side, there are no apologies from members. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Deputy Minister Nzunza.
No, thank you very much, Chairperson, and greetings to yourselves and all the members of the Portfolio Committee, and congratulations on navigating the issue of the Electoral Laws Amendment Bill. We know that it was not an easy process, but the team and the entire Portfolio Committee held through for us. With me today from GPW, to start off there, I have the CEO, And I also saw Sihle Ngubane coming from operations of GPW. I think if there's anybody else I left, they will still introduce them before they make their presentations. And then from Home Affairs, I have a team starting with DG and DDG Simon's responsible for immigration, DDG Sikama, DDG Mavuso, CFO and DDG Moite, as well as the Chief of Staff who are with us. From the BMA, we have a Commissioner of the BMA, Dr. Masia Pato, and as well as a General Shilembe, who's responsible for operations of the BMA. That is the team at a high level that we have brought here today. I will suggest, Chair, on the other matter, when we make reflections on and concluding remarks, that we then make reference to the incidents that you have requested that we reflect on. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Minister. IEC Commissioner, Chairperson.
Good morning, Chairperson of the committee, honorable members, Deputy Minister, colleagues. With me are the members of the commission, except for the judge. All of us are here. The CEO, the CFO, and the Deputy CEO that will support this presentation. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Government Printing Works.
Good morning, Chairperson, Honorable Deputy Minister, honorable members. From Government Printing Works, I am with all members of EXCO. I'm going to start with the CFO, Mr. Ian van der Merwe. And then I've got Michelle Modise, who is the Chief Director in HR, Mr. Sihle Ngubane, who is in Business Development, Mr. Kuben Mutli, Manufacturing and Engineering. I've got the Chief Audit Executive, Ms. Connie Shibambo. I've got Advocate Ramasoji, who is our Director, Legal Services. And I've got Mr. Kambude, who is coming from my office. So I think that those are all the members of EXCO that we have here today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We will now go straight to item 3. We'll invite the Deputy Minister to introduce the 2 reports and the 2 presentations. Then we'll request the IEC to introduce the 3rd report and the CEO the 4th report. And we're going to give members to interact with the reports once we've received all the presentations. Thank you, DM.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Without wasting time, because I will make reflections after the members have also made their questions, I would just request that we allow the DG, the Commissioner, as well as all the GPW will come at it after the IEC, that we allow the 2 to then make their presentations, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, DG.
Good morning, Chairperson. Good morning, honorable members, and also the Deputy Minister. Chairperson, the CFO, Mr. Gordon Hollambe, will take us through the presentation for the Department of Home Affairs. Over to you, CFO.
Good morning, Chairperson. Good morning, Deputy Minister, and the honorable members. Chairperson, can I just get confirmation that I'm audible, please?
Yes, you're audible, Mr. Hollambe.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Chairperson, we have a short presentation, so if I can start off, we're going to reflect on the past, then look at the current expenditure, and then look at the future. So, Chairperson, if I can ask that we move to slide number 3 immediately. So, Chairperson, slide number 3 is just an indication as to the expenditure outcomes for the last 8-9 years. So, Chairperson, you'll see from that presentation, from that slide, that the department has consistently spent close to 100%, if not 100% of its allocation, last year being no exception. So last year we didn't return 1 cent to National Treasury. So Chairperson, in respect of our past expenditure, so we have consistently used our full allocations. We have a capacity to spend, and we have not incurred any unauthorized expenditures, Chairperson, since 2013-14. Chairperson, the next one is just to get to the present. It's to give an indication as to where we are in the current financial year and what the prospects of us spending our full allocation is. This is as at the end of January, Chairperson. If you see the overall, we are on 74.7% spent as at the end of January. Chairperson, that's slightly under projections. For the current financial year, we are projecting underspent. Chairperson, we received the 500 mil for the digitization project rather late, and it took us some time to fill the positions for the business case that was funded. In addition to that, we have the passenger name recognition project that has not progressed. So there's another 200 mil there, Chairperson, that's potentially going to be underspent. So Chairperson, if I can then just go to slide 7. Slide 7 just also gives you an indication on the pressures on compensation of employees, goods and services. And Chairperson, from this, you can see at the end of January, we are sitting at 75% spend on compensation. So we are not under tremendous pressure when it comes to compensation of employees. That allows us to enable our offices to open for overtime and for the festive deployment. So it's helping us in that regard. Chairperson, I'm then going to get to the next slide, which is the future. Our MTF allocation letter for 2023-24 is presented here, Chairperson. So if you see from that, Chairperson, our budget is increasing from just over 9 billion to close to 10 billion. So Chairperson, so it's now 10.8 billion. And then it drops slightly in the 24-25 year, and then it also increases slightly to 11 billion over the MTF. Chairperson, there are specific baseline reductions, so and then there are baseline increases. The baseline increase is just over 1 billion. Most of that money, Chairperson, is for BMA and for the Independent Electoral Commission. And then under the adjustments or the function transfers, you'll see that all those function transfers are there to support the BMA or the establishment of the BMA. Some of that funding is coming from Home Affairs. The others are coming from the other departments involved in the initial setup of the BMA. Chairperson, we also have the earmarked funds. There's a digitization project where we're getting that the 800 mil in the new financial year is for the digitization 225. The total earmark, sorry, I'm confusing matters. The procurement of the passenger name recognition is 225, border management 1.3, Electoral Commission 2.2, and the represented political parties fund 360. So Chairperson, we also have the other earmarked funds. It's for the digitization project. Again, it's the 839. Of which there's a huge amount for compensation to cater for the appointment of the 10,000 youth. We also have goods and services and transfers there earmarked. And then our mainstay for the modernization project, the information systems modernization, Who Am I Online, is getting a huge, it's the same as the previous year's, Chair, but it's a huge budget. It's 875 mil. And all of that is for goods and services. Chairperson, lastly on this slide, you will notice that our compensation of employee ceiling is pegged at 3.9 billion. It's close to 40%. So Chairperson, if I can ask that we just move to the next slide, slide 8. This is just giving an indication as to the main cost drivers of the vote. As you will notice, Chairperson, compensation of employees is 36%, goods and services 27%. And then transfer payments is now 34.8%. Chairperson, transfer payments looks high, but it's because we are putting BMA in operation. Currently, the BMA funding is lying under Program 4, transfer payments. We're treating those transfers to the BMA in a similar fashion as that we treat the transfers to the Independent Electoral Commission. After transferring those funds, Chairperson, we will have no accountability or oversight over those funds going to the IEC or to the BMA, who will then be a separate schedule-free entity. Chairperson, the baseline increases over the MTF is 2 billion rands. Again, I say 900 for border management, 839 for digitization, and 285 for cost of living salary adjustments. If you look at the growth, Chairperson, over the MTF, it's marginal, it's 0.7%. It's growing from 10.8 billion in 2022-23 to 11 billion in 25-26. Chairperson, the next 3 slides, sorry, 5 slides, indicates the E&E allocations now. So we have taken this budget and we have broken it down, Chairperson, per program and per responsibility. So that when it comes to the 1st of April, people would be in a position to spend their allocations. We have basically been taking the MTF allocation letter, the overall budget, broken it down, given it to the responsibility managers, and the responsibility managers then had the responsibility to ensure that their projects, APP targets, and the main activities of the department are fully funded and included in the budget. So, Chairperson, I can take you through the detail, but I don't think it's necessary. The detail is there for program 1, 2, 3, and 4. The program 4, it's slide 13, Chairperson. You will notice there that there's the BMA increases are significant. The IEC increases are more or less stable, as well as the represented political parties fund. Chairperson, slide 14, if I can ask us what we take us there, it's the COE ceilings and expenditure. For the 23 E&E, the ceiling was 3.958 billion. For 24-25, it's dropping to 3.5 billion. And then for 25-26, it then picks up to 3.7. So, Chairperson, we will address this drop in the COE ceiling with National Treasury, because it will hinder our efforts to appoint additional capacity in the 23-24 financial year. But, Chairperson, so the bulk of that increase is to cater for our 10,000 youth. We will have to make provision for them also in 24-25, but that engagement with National Treasury will still happen in the MTF process. So, Chairperson, on the audited outcome, so the number of employees, we're giving there an increase as to the number of employees. You will see that for 24-25, there's a slight reduction, the 8.8. We did not include the 10,000 youth in that number, Chair. So that number will increase if we include the youth as personnel in terms of which we then pay COE. Chairperson, overall, then if I can then go to the last slide, it's also on the self-financing projections. Chairperson, self-financing is a mechanism which allows us to retain some of the revenue we generate and use it for purposes which National Treasury has defined. Now, we use the self-financing to pay for expenditure relating to the generation of that revenue. So we use it for cash in transit, we use it for hospital connectivity, for the property look and feel, for financial accounting, and for archive management. So it's part of a digitization process. So, Chairperson, even for mobiles, there's an allocation there for mobiles of 50 mil under self-financing. That's for the vehicles itself. We have made provision for the drivers separately under compensation of employees. Chairperson, the overall self-financing allocation or projection is 987. We're getting close to R1 billion again on revenue collection. That's what we plan to spend that revenue should Treasury allow us to use the revenue generated to fund expenditure relating to the generation of such. Chairperson, lastly, it's been recommended that the presentation be noted. Chairperson, I thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hollambe. DG?
No, Chairperson, thanks. That's it from our side with regards to that presentation. We can move to the second one. I suppose the second one is from the BMA over to the deputy, to the commissioner of the BMA, Dr. Mastiapat.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair, and thanks to the Minister and the committee members. If we can then start with the presentation on the BMA. I suppose that's okay. I suppose the presentation is visible. If there is any challenge, you can just indicate. I will then start in the meantime. Maybe the issue that we might need to contextualize the presentation with Honorable Chair and the committee members is just to say that the Border Management Authority presentation will look a bit different, although it will still achieve the same objective of reflecting on the budget. And the reason for that is on the basis that we are still to be established by the 1st of April, as the committee members will remember, but also just to indicate that in terms of this particular presentation, we are to also contextualize the budget itself, primarily because there are factors that actually define the budget, particularly in view of the shift of the people from the 4 government departments into the BMA and all of that technicality. It is for that reason that before we go into bullet number 3, we then contextualize certain aspects which the committee members will be able to follow through. But indeed, we will be able to give the presentation within the allocated timeline of 15 minutes. So if we can then just move to just remind the committee members in terms of the legislative footprint, which is something that the committee members are fairly aware of, and we will not necessarily try to recite it. Suffice to say for the committee members that from the 1st of April, as per this piece of legislation, we are to be expected to hit the ground running and start facilitating and manage the legitimate movement of persons and goods, as it were. And of course, at the same time, being responsible for access control responsibilities, which also have some bit of issues in as far as that part is concerned. Maybe as we then move further is just to do some bit of a recap in terms of saying, indeed, the BMA, it is, I would say, ready to be able to hit the ground running within the context of the Schedule 3A, as already indicated by the DG. And also just to say on the screen there, we are just demonstrating the vision, the mission, as well as the value proposition of the BMA going forward. Then the slide that follows just, I would say, reflect on the 4 key outcomes that will drive the implementation of the 2023-2024 budget allocation. And these are the 4 key outcomes that are embedded in the BMA strat plan, and obviously finding traction in the BMA annual performance plan as it comes to the 2023-2024 financial year. And I suppose on the basis of time, I wouldn't necessarily try to recite those outcomes. I suppose the committee members were able to see that. This particular slide also starts to reflect in terms of the operating model of an integrated border management platform, which is this BMA. What I just wanted to highlight on this particular slide, which again, prepares the way for the budget discussion, is on the basis that if you look on the extreme left, you will realize there that there are 4 key departments. That is Home Affairs, Health, Agriculture, as well as Environment. Those are the departments that we are taking over their responsibility when it comes to the implementation of the border laws, as it were, on the ground. And on that particular basis, the service level agreement then defines all of that activity and all. And that is why those departments in particular are in this particular process moving money out of them into the Border Management Authority. That is only the context I wanted to reflect on. I think the rest of the other issues we have already spoken about when we spoke to yourself. This subsequent slide here are starting to reflect on some of the processes that we have undertaken. Again, as I've indicated, in preparing for BMA to hit the ground running on the 1st of April. And that is to say that we have spent almost half of December as well as half of January, doing staff consultation together with the Public Service Coordinated Bargaining Council unions, particularly in preparing the people to be able to come into the Border Management Authority, particularly coming out of the 4 departments that I've spoken about. So on that particular basis, we can just also indicate to the committee that we ultimately put on the ground an integration agreement, which is a document that actually drives this particular process of integration, starting with the movement of people, but of course, including the movement of the budgets from the 4 departments. And that budget will include the compensation of employees as well as the operational budget or the operational cost, as it were. So that agreement has been signed between the employer, in this instance represented by the Department of Public Service, and administration, together with the Public Service Coordinated Bargaining Council, with the 3 main unions being PSA, Public Service Association, NAHAU, as well as NAPTOSA, as it were. And of course, the issue here is around the mechanics around the movement of the persons, as it were. I can also indicate to the committee that we are looking here about 1,950 staff complement coming from the 4 departments. On that basis, this slide just reflects on the consultative engagement that we have done in the first half of December, wherein we spoke to around 748 of the staff members. And of course, during January, we spoke to 885 staff members. We have then met the threshold in terms of the broader engagement, to the extent that 1,633 were actually seen in those particular consultations. And of course, there is a second half of that consultation, and that second half exclusively deals with the issues of having to now have one-on-one consultation with individual staff members. And that is why the remainder of the 306, we've agreed with Labour that they will be included at the level of the one-on-one. But of course, they were also briefed by some of the colleagues who were able to come through into those broader consultations. And I think one of the issues that we can also say to the committee members here is that this particular consultation was not necessarily a very easy one. And that is why, as you can see, the lowdown, we have engaged with Labour, and Labour understand the logic. And the logic is that we have been doing this thing as the ports had been functioning. And on that basis, we had to juxtapose between those that are on duty and those that are off, and all of that. And based on the thresholds, Labour is very much satisfied with the work that we have done, and all of the colleagues are fairly briefed. And of course, now as we speak, the colleagues are being engaged on one-on-one, as it were. Now, maybe just to also quickly just reflect on some of the key issues that came from the staff for these particular purposes. I think you can see them on screen. We were able to clarify all the staff complement on all of the issues that they raised about whether they can choose to remain in their departments and all of those kind of issues. And we were able to indicate to them that the functions has shifted, and therefore they are not necessarily to remain within the department. And of course, Labour was also able to make sure that they understand that logic. A lot of the other issues about them cashing out their pension money before, we indicated that they are not resigning, they are being transferred, their conditions have to continue, and therefore it was not advisable to do so. And a lot of the other issues, as you can see on screen, we're able to engage with all of those issues. This is another part wherein most of the biggest issues raised was around job security, and we affirmed to the members that within a Schedule 3A, a job security shouldn't necessarily be a biggest worry, as it were. On this particular slide is just to demonstrate a lot of the other issues that we have to do to prepare BMA to be able to hit the ground running. And I do know now that on the 7th of March, we are going to have a full discussion on these particular issues, as it were, and therefore we didn't want to go into these particular details. The other issue that we had to do in terms of that, as the BMA, we are ready to hit the committee, which was then to have 4 members, as well as the Remuneration and Human Capital Committee, which was then to have 3 members. And we can confirm to the committee that all of those members had been already enrolled. They have started official work on the 1st of February, and we can also confirm that on the 20th, we're able to onboard them. So these are the 2 key governance committees that are established. And of course, under the banner of the minister, within the context of the Public Financial Management Act, but also as part of the expectations in terms of the Border Management Authority, because these are the committees that will then be able to do some governance and accounting ultimately. When I say accounting, I mean reporting in terms of the work we do as the BMA to the minister as the process actually unfolds. So that is basically the issue. So if we can then go straight into the budget issues, all of those slides before this point was just to contextualize where we are so that we can be able to appreciate this particular part of the brief. Now, if we can then look at the current budget provision in terms of the 2022-2023, like I have said, and the CFO had confirmed it, BMA up to this point still functions as a special branch within the Department of Home Affairs. And this particular money reflected here is the allocation into that particular branch. So in this instance, 78 million had been allocated in terms of the current financial year for the compensation of employees. That will include all of the employees that are directly employed within this particular branch of the BMA. In this instance, we're able to spend around 47 million, which is 60%. And we are saying that the remainder of around 13 million will then be spent through between now and March. There will be some bit of a 10% remainder in as far as that part is concerned. We will be able to reflect on that in the next slide. In terms of the operational budget, there was around 4 million that was put on the table for operationalizing the branch BMA, and that includes running the activities of the border guards as we speak. And to that extent, we were able to spend around 3.3 million. And of course, we have around 300 million being a commitment. And to that extent, by the end of the financial year, we are very much hopeful that indeed we will have expend all of that money as requested. There was another 67 million, which was earmarked for the operationalization of the Border Management Authority, again allocated to the branch within Home Affairs. And to that extent, 36 million has been spent up to this particular point, and that represents 53%. And also just to indicate that the commitment that has been made, as you can see, it is a bit over than the allocated figures, as it were, which is 43 million, and therefore it comes to 65% as it comes through. It is for that reason that the budget, which was also allocated for infrastructure, which is 18 million, which is at the bottom part there has been an underspending on that. And as we speak, we are in the process of requesting a budget shift that should then be able to offset the budget pressure in terms of the earmarked funds, as you can see up there. And that is the process that we are actually doing with the department, and obviously under the guidance of the CFO within the department. So that is broadly, I would say, the expenditures relating to the 2022-2023. Maybe as to conclude on this part is just to reflect a bit around some of the under expenditure indicated, especially for instance, the 18 million as we've indicated. That money was allocated to assist us to be able to do the redesigning of the 6 ports as well as the redevelopment with the view of making them one-stop border post as we go into the future. Committee members will remember that for that purpose, we had to get a PPP, that is the public-private partnership arrangement, which was to be approved by the National Treasury for that to kick in. Unfortunately, we have done all the paperwork that is required, but National Treasury has been looking into the documentation and they were not necessarily able to get that done in the financial year, as it were. And that is why the underspending. And it is for that reason that we've requested that that money be shifted to assist us, especially as part of operationalizing the Border Management Authority. Suffice to say, on the PPP, the engagement with Treasury happened just this past Friday. And as we speak, they are very much positive that they will be able to issue the request for proposals to the market very soon. So we will start seeing some movement in as far as that part is concerned. But of course, in terms of the transitional structure, just to indicate that we're able to appoint all of the 200 border guards as we have indicated to yourself. But of course, in the appointment of some of the senior management positions within the transitional structure, as it were, there has been some bit of delays there and then. And some of those delays were also embedded in the issues around the vetting that has to be done by the State Security Agency, as it were. And we're not able to fill all of those positions within the transitional structure. And the reality is that all of those will then move into the permanent structure, which is going to kick in on the 1st of April going forward. And I suppose on that particular basis, we need to be able to say, we will then see the actual budget reflections in the 2023-2024 and how it looks like. And this is now the budget, 2023-2024. And this is now the budget for the Border Management Authority, which is supposed to then operationalize the BMA as a Schedule 3A public entity. What we want to start by indicating here, and this is very much important, Chairperson and the committee members, is that the monies that you can see there under 2023-2024, especially with the DHA, with the Department of Health, with DALRAT, with the DFFE, all of it, as you can see it there, it comes to 1 billion and around 91 million, as you can see that. That money, as it comes into the BMA, coming from this department, it is money that is people's salaries that they're coming with into the BMA. It is coming in as part of the operational expenditure coming into the BMA. And on that basis, you will see the breakdown a bit at the bottom there, demonstrating that 1,800 million of it is what we call the compensation of employees, which means is pure salaries. And of course, the remainder there will then be, I would say, the operational budget, as it were. So this then becomes very important for the committee members to appreciate that this is not new money, but this is the money that gets transferred from these departments into the BMA. If we then look at the bigger picture, you will then see the figure under the Department of Home Affairs actually start to change. And the reason that figure changes there, it becomes 993 million, is because in there, now we have added the new money that came from National Treasury that comes into the Border Management Authority for its operationalization. And that money is 250 million. So simply put, in terms of a single financial year, which is 2023-2024, the BMA has been allocated 250 million to get it operationalized. If you are to look at the medium term, the money all in all become 900 million. And the reason for that is because the first year is 250, the second year, which is 24-25, is 300, and the third year is 350 million. That is why all in all, they talk about 900 million. But for the coming financial year is 250 million. Now you will see the rest of the other figures there coming from the other departments. They are fairly the same. So all in all, we can say the baseline for the Border Management Authority, starting with 2023-2024, is going to stand as 1.3 billion. And as we have indicated, if you look at that money and you look it over the medium term, it talks about 4.2 billion. But the reality of that is 3.3 all transferred money and around 900 over the MTech new money. If you look at as the only one financial year, just over 1 billion is transferred money and only 250 is the new money. So that then becomes very much contextual. If you look at the slide, at the details in between there, we are starting to give a breakdown to say around 1.1 billion is then going to be the compensation of employees all in all. And I think you can see the breakdown there. The 496 from Home Affairs, the 144 from Health, and the 159 from DALRAT, and the other one there from Environment. Then you will see the 310 million. That money then includes the money that is currently running the program within the Department of Home Affairs, because that is what we call reprioritized money, is that money that I've spoken about in terms of the 2022-2023 financial year. Now, let's then conclude this particular issue here by saying this, and this then becomes very critical as we conclude the presentation. When we made the initial business case to the National Treasury, within the context of the operationalization of the BMA, still at the bare minimum, in view of the permanent structure, we requested around 2.6 billion. And that 2.6 billion that we requested, we're looking at around 1.7 just for the compensation of employees. We're looking at the time to bring around at least 1,000 new or additional border guards. and also looking at around 922 operational expenditure. And there we're looking at the integration of the systems. We're looking at the whole issue of bringing in the technology in terms of the new tools of trade and all of those kind of things that are critical for a law enforcement authority. And obviously, unfortunately, out of the 2.6 requests, we then got 250 million, which then practically says to the committee that we are sitting as a shortfall, and to that extent, we will not be able to fully, I will say, operationalize the BMA as it was initially anticipated. And of course, I suppose the committee members are aware of what is understood to be the constrained fiscus. So to that extent, the next slide then starts to indicate what are the mechanisms that we have to put into place based on these realities. One, we are looking at least bringing around 400 additional border guards, which means that we are bringing more priority in bringing the boots on the ground, which then means that we will not be able to fill most of the positions that are in the BMA transitional, permanent structure as we presented it to yourself. Most of those executives, we will not be able to have them. It is for that reason that we have been guided that we need to do a corporate shared service model with the Department of Home Affairs, which means the department will still be able to do support in a lot of back office work into the BMA. And of course, that agreement is in the process of being finalized. As we hit the ground on the 1st of April, it means we will be having that reality. But of course, there are other realities that the committee members will be aware of. And those realities are that the Department of Home Affairs itself, as the DG had always presented before you, is operating at a high level of incapacity in a way. I think it's around 50% or so, as the DG had said. But at the same time, they will then be assisting us, as it were. And I think those are some of the realities that we need to be aware of. Therefore, it means that we will be able to, I say, incrementally be able to bring some of the things over the medium term. And we hope that as we go forward, there will be some grace that might probably come through for us to be able to do some of the things that we have originally intended to do as the Border Management Authority, as it were. And of course, some of the issues, as I've indicated, with bringing some technologies and high-level tools of trade, we will not be able to do all of those. And of course, those are the realities of the finances. So that is, in short, the presentation, Honorable Chair, as well as the committee members. And of course, we are hoping that you will note this particular briefing. And of course, as I've indicated, we will come to talk more about our actual preparedness for the 1st of April in totality on the allocated time slot of the 7th of March. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Mashiapata. We're now going to receive the presentation from the IEC Chairperson Miebza.
Chairperson of the session, I do not wish to delay this presentation. I will invite the COO to deal with the presentation. I think it is important to note that in the presentation, the CEO will share with us some of the funding pressures that we will be navigating in this year, even as we work on the elections based on the new bill, the Electoral Amendment Bill. Thank you very much. I hand over to the CEO.
Thank you very much, Chairperson of the Commission and members of the Commission, Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee and members of the committee, Deputy Minister and colleagues from the department and other entities. We're going to do the presentation in two parts. Of course, we are alive to the allotted time, and we don't propose to go beyond that. This is really the overview that we will give. We are conscious that this is not an opportunity to deal with the annual performance plan, but we'll just give you some key highlights that we think are worthy of mentioning at this stage, even as we don't discuss the totality of the annual performance plan. And the CFO will get into the detail around the budget, but just the highlight, we're presenting a 2.2 billion budget for 2023-2024. And that budget is housed in 4 programs, and it bears 14 targets. Now, here are some of the key things that I think are worthy of mentioning. That the budget, perhaps before that, what we are presenting today basically is the financial platform for the preparation of the 2024 national and provincial election. That's really the context of the budget, is the public investment into the delivery of the national strategic project to compose a new legislative assembly by way of parliament, as well as the 9 provincial legislatures. So, if you like, this budget gives effect to the constitutional promise of regular elections. That's what this budget is ultimately about. So we do provide, therefore, for 2 national voter registration weekends. One in the latter part of this year, dates are still to be determined by the Commission, and one early next year. The budget also provides for revisions to ICT applications, which are necessary to enhance and ensure that the necessary defense are built around our ICT network. It also provides for the bills of materials that are required to deliver the 2 national registration weekends. It provides further for the launch of a vibrant, massive communication campaign to enthuse the South African citizenry for participation in the election. And that communication campaign will be undergirded by a logo, and the communication platform mix will involve traditional elements as well as new digital elements, your traditional print, radio, TV, and a little bit of newspaper still. But you'll see a slight movement from the traditional media to the embracing of digital media more and more. The budget also provides for the incremental capacity increase of the institution. Currently, we have 913 permanent officials, and that is hardly enough to deliver a national and a provincial election. So we've got to, on a fixed term basis, increase the capacity of the institution. And in that regard, this budget provides for assistant project coordinators at the municipal level for 13 months, 390 of them about, and then municipal outreach coordinators for 12 months, 402 of them. These are people who will be coordinating outreach activities, going to communities, giving people education, giving people information at the community level, at the ward level, to ensure that every citizen of the Republic is aware of the requirements for participation, it's aware of the times when the election processes are going to be taking, and eventually is aware of how to technically mark their ballot papers. So the budget also provides for the recruitment and training of registration staff we contemplating just 50,000 such staff for both registration weekends. The idea there being to use the same cadre of staff for the 2 registration weekends to the extent that is possible. And then the provision of ICT hardware. An enterprise, an election enterprise also require a significant public investment in ICT hardware and connectivity services to ensure that our voting stations, our local offices, our provincial offices, and our national data center are connected. But that connectivity requires investment in ICT hardware. Then it also provides for the local delivery model, and in other words, expanding the your MEOs, your sub-MEOs, your area managers, people who will do the coordination in the wards to ensure that voting stations are booked and the like, as well as local storage sites for the equipment that is in the bill of material, and the identification and contracting of voting station, and ultimately the maintenance of our network of offices throughout the country. So, Chair, we've also taken account of the recently passed electoral amendment bill and tried to accommodate the operational and financial implication of that bill in our budget process, and that relates to the rewriting of ICT business application, in particular the candidate nomination system, to take account of the independent candidates, to take account of the signature requirements, and so on. Furthermore, the logistics information system and the result system, again, it must speak to the reality of the participation of independent candidates. I think Schedule 1A, which formed a huge part of the deliberation in the assessment of the bill, will now find expression in a revised or rewritten result system. And then share some funding pressures. Obviously, there is workshops and training of staff, and regional and provincial workshop promoting the awareness of the independence of the participation of independents in national and provincial elections. The increase in the number of ballot papers by a minimum of 50% to accommodate the regional ballot. Clearly, when the MTF was developed 3 years ago, we did not anticipate the need for a 3rd ballot. We now have it, it's a reality, and it's an additional funding pressure that we want to contend with. And then the expected increase in the number of contestants, resulting in longer ballots and possible reconfigured ballot papers. Printing presses can only accommodate single column ballots of a particular length. Most of them is 630 millimeters. And if the number of contestants go beyond the 630 millimeters, the commission will then be compelled in those circumstances to consider a reconfiguration of ballot papers. A public education program to ensure that the revised electoral system is well known by members of the public. And lastly, workshop for new electoral contestants. So that's really, members of the committee, what this budget provides for. Of course, we don't deal with the APP to link targets and numbers that are linked to some of these activities, but we felt it's important to assure you that we have linked this budget, or we see this budget as a financial platform for the delivery of the 2024 national and provincial elections. And with that, Chair, we'll go now into the figures, and the CFO will take us through.
Thank you, CEO. I think we can get straight to the numbers if we can move to the next presentation slide. I think it's important to highlight that we have had to absorb cuts. If I look at the 23-24 year, we've had to absorb approximately 240 million. The subsequent year, 251 million. You'll then see that it leaves us in 23-24 with a budget of estimated 2.2 billion. And then 24-25, we're looking at 2.3 billion. I also think it's important to also indicate that with our surpluses, anticipated surpluses, we've had quite a strong and continuous communication with National Treasury in terms of retaining these funds. And these will be there to assist us with the funding pressures that we had previously highlighted. This slide just graphically depicts what I've detailed in the previous slide. I think you'll clearly see the bars, the yellow then reflecting the budget cuts in relation to what was initially allocated, and then the lighter blue then subsequently showing the following, the budget after the cuts have been effected. If we go to program one is our administration program. Overall, we're sitting at 820 million in this budget allocated to program one. If we get into the details, this is just a picture of what the income statement would be if it related to program one. You'll see how the costs have been spread out, current payments. For 23-24, looking at 820 million, compensation of employees, 237 million, goods and services, 537 million, and then 45 million depreciation. I think it's important to highlight that the income statement would then exclude any capital or assets that would have been acquired. If we can move swiftly along to the next slide. This is again a graphical depiction of the income statement and the different years in terms of what has been allocated. If we move to program two, this is our core program. This is the electoral matters. The estimated budget is 1,268,686,000 that has been allocated for 23-22. Once again, this is just a cut of what relates to programs to income statement. You'll see that our current payments will be at show about 1.2, compensation 655 million, goods and services anticipating 552 million, and then depreciation 60 million. And as I've indicated, the assets will not be reflected in your income statement. Once again, this is just a graphical depiction of what I have presented in the previous slide. Program 3, this is our outreach program. This is our third program. For 23-24, you're looking at 258 million, 154,000 that's been allocated to this budget. The cut of the slice is made up of compensation of employees of 113 million, and then the goods and services of about 144 million. This is just again a graphical depiction over the 3 years of what has been allocated to the budget, and we see it grows gradually. Program 4, party funding. This is our party funding and liaison program. The allocated budget for 23-24 is 25 million. We've really been conservative here in terms of the units and slowing down in terms of getting more capacity in terms of staff. And this will increase once the intensity of the work increases in that unit. For purpose of recruitment, this is just again an income statement portion of what will make up the 25 million, compensation of about 9.2 million, goods and services 15.8 million, rounded up to about 16 million. And then once again, you'll see over the 3 years, we've got allocated 25 million for the 3 years. It's an equal split, equal share. And then that concludes the numbers. Thank you.
Chairperson of the committee, that then concludes our presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, CEO and the commissioners. Can we invite Government Printing Works?
Chairperson, good morning, honorable members, Deputy Minister. If I'm allowed, Chairperson, to share the screen, I request the Secretariat to share the screen, the presentation for us.
Mr. Matonsi, can we assist the CEO? Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I would like to request your indulgence, Chairperson, to co-present with this Chief Audit Executive as well as the CFO, but also indicate during the presentation where they need to be coming in and present. Essentially, the CAE will talk to the audit matters when the CFO will delve into detail on the financials of Government Printing Works. Let me start with the critical projects. So I'm going to request that we skip this slide. And the next one, this are just our Apex priorities. Let's skip this one as well. These are our priorities for the 2020-2025 MTSF cycle. Let's skip this one as well. I want to go straight into the slide. The reason why it is important for me to not waste time on the other slides and go straight into this is because I need to start by indicating the critical projects that reflect areas where our budget has been and will continue to be spent in the coming MTF cycle. The critical one I'd like to start with is on the repositioning of Government Printing Works. We'll be focusing on the change management as well as culture change. To this effect, we've already appointed GTEC, which is already busy with the development of our turnaround strategy and provide support on the implementation of the recommendations that came out of the Ministerial Review Panel report, and are also in the process of appointing a change specialist to also assist us in this regard. Modernization of Government Printing Works has been on the agenda. It's part of our strat plan. We're going to be focusing on all the ICT interventions that we have set out to achieve. And this will actually help us to respond to opportunities presented by the strategic direction of the printing and manufacturing sector in line with 4IR. The migration plan is being implemented to ensure stabilization as well as sustainability of the ICT environment. It is critical to mention that business continuity has been at the center of our operations to ensure sustainability of our own organization, given the challenges that we've experienced before, particularly within the ICT environment, as well as our facilities. And this will essentially be attained through an overhaul of our ICT infrastructure and systems. And we're also strengthening our on-site as well as remote backup capacity and capability to make sure that at any stage, we should not go back to a stage where we have system crashes that are catastrophic and lead to a loss of data within the organization. We have embarked on a conscious journey towards attaining a clean audit, which rests upon the following pillars, which is a focus on quality oversight processes in GPW to achieve the imperative of a clean audit. We also have been focusing on strengthening our internal controls through monitoring them, testing them to ensure that they remain relevant and effective. Financial probity is at the center of our SCM processes because we want to engender a culture that supports probity within all our financial processes to ensure that they are efficient, compliant with legislation, and have integrity, equitable, and are also fair to our customers. To this effect, we've already actually started to conduct probity assessments on our procurement processes before tenders are awarded, just to attain this reality. Overall governance is critical as we want to ensure that leadership, management, responsibility, as well as effectiveness is attained, as well as the governance of our structures, Exco, Menco, Audit and Risk Committee within the combined assurance framework. Having concluded the Ministerial Review panel investigations, a report that was presented to us has been actioned. We have developed an action plan at an organizational level, which is being implemented. And we've categorized it into short, medium, as well as long-term activities and milestones. And those are being monitored on a weekly basis in our EXCO meetings. The security printing bill it's a very critical piece of legislation once attained that serves to help us ring-fence the printing of state security documents within the 3 spheres of government and entities. To this effect, we've already conducted consultative sessions with all provinces. We're only left with Northwest, which at the point of doing the presentation and submitting it was scheduled for the 23rd of February, but it has since been moved to tomorrow, which is the 1st of March, and we will be presenting. Then the last province to be consulted will be Western Cape on a date to be confirmed. Then the bill will follow the normal draft legislative process to facilitate ultimate ascension by the state president. On the ministerial review panel, there was also a recommendation that we fast-track the appointment of the Ministerial Advisory Board. This is a structure that has been on our strategic risk register, and we had intended to actually go ahead and implement it. We are consulting DPSA as well as the relevant structures on this structure. It is a structure that is established in line with the Public Service Act, Section 7A(4)(e), which allows the minister to exercise discretion in terms of appointing members of the board. And these are members that would be appointed without any legislative executive functions within the organization, but would serve to advise minister as well as EXCO on GPW strategic direction as well as operations. We continue to strengthen employee wellness and occupational health and safety, and this is also seen in the next point of implementing our asset recapitalization program, which focuses on the critical infrastructure projects such as refurbishing our new head office, which is currently underway. And by the end of this financial year, the next financial year, we should see ourselves moving into that building. The master plan as well is a hallmark project for us, which will assist us to house the state-of-the-art equipment that we require as we delve into the SADC as well as other African countries, in order to produce the desired products that will assist to generate more revenue for government printing works. GBSA has been appointed as the implementing agent, and they've begun with the administrative processes toward initiating the master plan, as well as refurbishing the new head office. For us to be compliant in this sector, we need to make sure that we are also implementing certain ISO standards, and those are all the standards that are being planned for implementation in the MTF period. We have conducted research and development, and we are in the process of appointing a service provider to come and assist us so that we can then implement all those ISO standards within our environment. In line with our localization strategy, we also intend to have a polycarbonate printing and assembly plant within GPW, and this will really revolutionize our printing capacity and capability, because the techno-economic study that is being conducted will actually enable us to be an agile printing facility which is ready to deliver based on the trends of the sector now as well as into the future, meaning that the market would also come and source this type of paper within government printing works. So these are some of the critical projects that I thought I should preface the budget on the financials with. But Chair, as I've indicated at the beginning, let me pause at this point and allow the CAE to take us through the next 2 slides, which is slide 8 and 9 on the audit matters, and thereafter the CFO will then delve into the financials. Through the Chairperson, let me hand over to the CAE. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO, and good morning, Chair, members, Honorable Deputy Minister and colleagues. From my side, in terms of audit findings, we've been tracking and monitoring all these audit findings that we raised in priors, including those raised by the AG. So as of the end of Q3 in December, we have confirmed and we are able to provide assurance that 77.9%, which is sitting on the middle column of resolved at the bottom, have been resolved by management. So we were able to actually do our testing around the areas to test the controls, to check adequacy and effectiveness of those controls, compliance to all legislative regulations and all that. So they have managed to resolve 77.9%. The 22.1% we are currently busy with. It was not resolved by end of Q3. We are currently busy testing that. And out of the 77.9%, I need to indicate that financial services, which actually holds a lot of the findings in this particular matrix or database, was not evaluated in the previous quarters because we were not able to do any testing around financial services as a result of the data loss, because there was no data to be provided through to us for us to be able to continue with our audit. So we have since agreed with the CFO that we will be visiting financial services only now in Q4, which is an audit that we are currently busy with. So only after the end of this financial year, I will be in a position to be able to confirm how much findings have been resolved within the financial services. But overall, all other branches have been working hard to resolve their findings, and we are at the point that we are now concluding the final phase to confirm if the 22.1% that is which is outstanding has been resolved by management or not. That we will also be able to also give our outcome of that review at the end of the financial year. Thank you, CEO. I think I've also touched on the next slides. Yeah, this slide also covers everything that I've mentioned in regard to the statistics that were shown in the previous slide. So thank you, CEO.
If we could hand over to the CFO to delve into the financials for government printing works. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair and DM and members. I suppose we can move to the next slide then, which talks to MRP.
Okay, perhaps, sort of through your indulgence, just to give a high-level summary to conclude the section on the MRP. I've mentioned this at the beginning. We have just appointed a forensics investigation company that has been appointed to...
CEO? I want to get a sense as to how you want us to run on the presentation, because you invited the CFO, so we don't confuse members in terms of the items on your presentation. Is the CFO presenting now, or we are taking over?
My humble apologies, Chair. If I may be allowed to just...
You don't need to apologize. I just want to ascertain my clarity, whether is the CFO is going to continue or is you, because he was on the platform and you have invited him.
Okay. So maybe let me allow the CFO to proceed and conclude the rest of the presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Chair, again, and DM and members. The slide just depicts our current position as at the end of the third quarter. I'll take you, to the bottom, where we're saying that we're looking at a profit now of about 202 million as it stands, and we've kept that consistent in our projections. The slide might be a bit confusing in terms of the minuses, but as it stands now, we are looking at generating a profit, and as you do know, we are self-sustaining at the moment. I must just say that the third quarter was one of the quarters that we actually were able to close for the first time in quite a while, given all the data issues that we had. So there will be some amendments or some cleaning up of this going forward, and especially I'll talk to that in a little while in terms of our depreciation and our fixed asset register. Next slide, please. There was also a question previously on how our revenue is generated. So most of it obviously comes from our printing services. In terms of what we were able to generate, sitting at 70%, advertisement sales at 41%. Advertisement sales, unfortunately, is also a product of our ability on our EKZ system, which has had some difficulty. We've had workarounds We tried workarounds in terms of upping this revenue, and it's been partly successful. But there are some challenges with this, and hopefully with the system going live soon, we should be able to address some of this. But that does put some pressure on our ability to bill, especially on our advertisement sales. Next slide, there. So just to conclude on this, so as it stands now, we're sitting at 75% of our employee benefits that has been spent. There are some underspends on the other items, which is obviously a function of our ability to raise revenue. You will see that our depreciation, in particular, is sitting at 20%. And the reason for this is that we are reviewing our fixed asset register and breaking it down in terms of minor and major assets. We have come from a very low base after losing data on the asset register, and this being a non-cash item is one of the items that we are evaluating going forward, and probably would have some amendments to this number when it comes to the end of the financial year. But why it was important for us to not closing off periods, is that it is done in anticipation of being able to turn out the financial statements by the end of May as per the PFMA requirements. Next slide. So we can also say that the structure has now been started to be implemented in the current year, and we are seeing some spend coming through on our cost of employment. It is still on par with budget and the projections. We have obviously had system challenges, and as I said, some of the actual expenditure will be balanced out during the fourth quarter of the current year. Our capex is still behind, although it will be funded mostly from our retained earnings. But we are gaining momentum with this capex, in particular what we refer to as the Absa building. Let me say, I'm not sure what's happening to the screen now. There we go. As I said, the depreciation budget is now based on our status quo of the fixed asset register. We have done a lot of work on this in terms of the useful life, in terms of breaking up between major and minor assets. And we are seeing the results. We will see the results in the 22-23 financial year, but most likely the full impact of the advantage of this will only be felt in 23-24. But we are moving on this matter as quick as possible, and I must say our service provider has come to the party in terms of assisting us with this. Next slide. So just on the organizational structure, we can move to the next slide. Yeah. We have started with the implementation on the 1st of April. It is obviously a continuous journey. As we continue, we've had reviewed, and in line with the approved strategic plan, we've consulted DPSA. And it was approved by the Minister of Home Affairs in concurrence with the Minister of Public Service and Administration. There is obviously a new set of skills that are being required, especially in manufacturing and engineering operations. The expansion of the footprint into SADC and other African countries will also obviously impact on the structure. The entity aims to establish itself as a security printer of choice, as the CEO has mentioned, in the African continent, by effectively assisting its customers with the complex problems, potentially identity fraud, and ensure document security. So this is one of the key drivers going forward with our organizational structure, together with our revenue improvement plans. So there's about 417 positions added to the existing structure. 74 has been reassigned with minor changes to job content, and so in total there will be 1,153 posts in the structure when it is concluded. We have looked at implementation. Obviously, can't implement in 1 year, given all the recruitment issues. So we're looking at a period of 1 to 5 years. But we're also reviewing it, Chair, continuously in terms of our current ability to fund that. And initially, we will look at priority posts and take a view on it as we go along. This is just a quick summary of what the structure looks like. We are aligning it to our budget programs. That in itself is going to be an exercise because we do have to reassign quite a number of cost centers to speak to this budget or to this structure going forward in our budget structure. Next slide. So some of the considerations in this budget obviously is looking at passports and IDs volumes and A4 paper. We take our volumes from DHA. We have passed on a discounted cost to the DHA, and I'll talk to it in a little while. And that costs will still, or that discount will still be applicable for 23-24, but for the outer years it will have to be reviewed. We have looked at the escalation of 5.5% over the MTF period. And the reason why we're using the 1920 actuals for 23-24 is that was the last year that we had a full year of operations. The subsequent 2 years were affected by COVID, and obviously with some of the losses that we've had in data, and we felt that we can only reasonably consider 1920 as a base year going forward. Then obviously materials usage is kind of per rata to the revenue that we generate, as well as the cost of sales applicable to that. Next slide. Cost of employment will be, as we said, approved and budgeted over a period of 5 years. Our goods and services, we've used the 23-24 as a baseline year, and then in terms of guidelines, we've increased it on 5.5% year on year going forward. The depreciation is a major project. We will base it on the recalculated useful life of assets, as well as our capex going forward over the ENE period. But we do foresee some significant changes on this depreciation number as we go forward. Next slide. So Chair, the salient point on this slide is essentially our total sales, looking at 1.6 billion and then growing it to 1.8 and 2 billion over the ENE period. The 1.6 billion, in fact, is quite conservative. We think, as it's not a significant change from what we budgeted in 1920. We've kept the projected surplus at 10%, and in line with the National Treasury guidelines on this. But obviously, we will report on actuals as we continue reporting on a quarterly basis. Unfortunately, well, we don't foresee a loss, but in terms of what we understand the regulations will be, we're also not allowed to budget for a loss, although we do not foresee anything significant in terms of losses over this period. Next slide. Yeah, so just to summarize, so our revenue forecasted at 15.94% over the MTF. Our expenditure at 15.54 over the MTF period. So there is concurrence in terms of these numbers, and they do relate to each other. Next slide. Chair, we've added this in terms of our financial position or balance sheet item. It was a request previously by some of the members. Again, just picking up on this points, you will see that our inventories that we foresee to have on stock will be about 355 million at the end of the financial year. Our receivables are about 211 million. We're trying to keep it consistent. At the moment, we are able to do such. You can see that we are liquid as it stands at the moment, and with about R1 billion of cash expected to be available. The retained earnings, we are also engaging Treasury to retain these earnings over the MTF period, and essentially to fund our capex improvement, which big ticket items will include machinery and equipment, the new head office, as well as the master plan. So we honestly, are engaging them to make sure we do get that retained earnings retained, although we are getting some pushback from Treasury in this respect. Next slide. So just to speak broadly on the core DHA discount. We have passed on a 50 Rand discount on passports to them. These are all ex-VAT figures, and 8 Rand on the ID cards. And we project that the total savings based on those volumes, which would be in the region of about 58 million to the DHA for the next financial year. Having said that, we've already passed it on in this current financial year. And if we do look at a 5.5% increase from 24-25, and even 25-26, then DHA would be paying what they've paid for passport and an ID in the 2021 financial year, or even the 1920 financial year. So we passed this on to them, but we can't sustain that over the longer period. So there's 1 year left of this discount, if you like. Next slide. Just a broad summary of our expected capex expenditure in terms of our asset replacements. Some of this obviously is a function of our buildings and our facilities being ready for that. But you can see that we've moved quite a bit in terms of trying to improve, especially on our bare office, and that would open up quite a bit of space for us to further look at the issue of equipments. The other matters on IT will relate to us starting to look at a new ERP system. This is quite a major project for us, and then also for our integrity of our financials going forward. Next slide. So just to recap on this, so I just spoke about the enterprise resource planning system, the ERP one, as well as the resuscitation of the EcoZ system. They were all affected by the system outages. The EcoZ system is especially important from a revenue generating point of view, because we can't keep on managing this on a manual system. The ICT environment kind of needs a revamp on most of the areas. The DBSA has been appointed to manage the leasehold improvements on the headquarters. We've seen the progress on that, and compared to what we had last time we met, there's been some huge improvements on that. The next step then would be looking at our master plan improvements to the factory, and if that master plan is in place, then a lot of the capex will flow from in terms of equipment. We do have the retained surpluses and some of the future surpluses that we expect to retain, and we've engaged Treasury on that score. And we're also looking at significantly improving our Eastern Cape and Limpopo facilities and capacity. We've seen Limpopo as well. The project is actually quite far advanced, and we're looking at moving staff into that facility probably by the end of March, end of April at the latest. Next one. Just a quick one on the compensation again. You will see that the growth over the period from about 365 to 561, and this is projecting the successful implementation of the entire structure. As I said before, we will have to look at this consistently. As we are self-funding, if our revenue should be able to cover this. But as it stands now, this is the position on our compensation of employees. Next slide. Yeah, just a breakdown of the goods and services over the period for our branches. The one question that might come up is why corporate services is so big, clearly because we do have a number of big sections within corporate services, being ICT, facilities, and those are some of the big ones that do take quite a bit of budget, and that's the reason for that. Next slide. So Chair, let me just conclude this and saying that we are looking at a positive outlook at the moment. There will be challenges, obviously, but we will find a way of dealing with them, and hopefully that would not hinder our growth plans. The budget accommodates our ability to improve financial outcomes as per our new IPP. The capex drive is based on some realistic expectations of the growth pace of GPW, and we're factoring it in over a period. It's not a shotgun approach. The structure also allows us to achieve some of our targets in terms of the revenue generation. We have now a dedicated portfolio for sales within operations, and we foresee that would be will go a long way in making strides in building relationships, especially on the SADC regions and other potential revenue streams internationally. The projects, as we said, will be funded or funded now through our retained earnings. We are not asking any additional funds from the fiscus to achieve our goals. And obviously, the one big issue for us is to improve our audit outcomes over this period. And yeah, we've had significant challenges in this aspect, but we are moving towards that, and also capacitating our financial services branch over the next few months. And Chair, I think that would be the last slide. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, CEO. If you want to add something.
Thank you so much. Earlier on, when I came in, my apologies, I just wanted to indicate that the slides on the MRP I had covered in my opening remarks. So that should conclude our presentation. I have nothing else to add. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, CEO. Thank you, DM. Thank you, Commissioner Mashiapata, Commissioner Mieta, and the CEO Fosi. We are going to now request, invite members to participate, to interact with the four presentation on budget. We going to allow member to interact with all this presentation at once. We then going to, after that, request responses or comments from the team led by the DM. Then we'll establish a way forward. Members in attendance is Honorable van der Merwe, Honorable Molekwa, Honorable Pillay, Honorable Kanyile, Honorable Khwase, Honorable Ross, Honorable Mukhale, Honorable Modise Mtsa, Honorable Bongo Thomas. So I'm going to invite members to interact with the report. I know that the presentations, we must at least exhaust all the issues. And I request that you take notes of the questions or comments so that at least adequately we respond to the issues that members have identified in your presentation. I'll start in that order. Honorable van der Merwe.
Good morning, Chairperson. Thank you very much. Good morning to our Deputy Minister and all our colleagues, MPs, and thank you for the presentations. Chairperson, I want to start with the Department of Home Affairs. Now, there's something that really worries me. I do understand the need for us to be shifting funding from the department to the BMA. Of course, the BMA must be funded. It's an important project. But what concerns me is if you look at the slides, there's a decrease, and it will be in the outer years as well. There's a decrease in the funding for the immigration branch. Now, what worries me is that we already do not have enough immigration inspectors or officers. I think just recently, Minister Becky Cele, when he was announcing his crime statistics, he pointed at the Department of Home Affairs when he said that his crime statistics are increasing because of the prevalence of undocumented and or illegal migrants. We've just seen that South Africa has been grey listed because we see funds flowing from our borders
And this is an issue we raised before, that illegal businesses run by illegal migrants are funding terrorist organizations. So we do have an illegal migration crisis already within the borders of South Africa. The BMA will fix future illegal migration, but we do need a capacitated immigrations branch that will deal with the current crisis. That there's already a current crisis, BMA will fix a problem that will occur in future. So then I do not understand how we can justify this massive drop in budget for the immigration branch, because it really worries me. In fact, it doesn't mean that we have given up on addressing our illegal migration crisis. In other words, have we given up to identify or make sure that everybody that is within our borders are legally permitted to do so? Because now also the question arises, every day one is confronted by stories of illegal migrants being arrested for either being within our borders illegally or being in possession of fraudulent documents. But then if there's no money, then I also guess we are giving up on the issue of deportations because there's simply no money. So I wanted to know just a comment maybe from the DG or the Deputy Minister in this regard. Then also I want to ask, why are mobile units and the counter-corruption unit listed under self-financing budget? I think I saw that in one of the slides. With regard to the BMA, I know that we will be engaging with the BMA next week, I think. But, it's fine for us to be financing the BMA, but then I saw a very worrying article that was on the front page of the City Press that said that the BMA is in fact being stopped from executing its duties by police officers who have got entrenched interests at the border, whether it means that they are actually involved in some of the criminal activities that occur there. So the question then arises, we're funding a BMA, but on the other hand, they are being stopped from executing this important job that they should be doing. So I wonder maybe if the BMA wants to comment on that. With regards to the rollout of the additional 400 boots on the ground, the presentation did speak to technology, but I wanted to know whether we will be procuring drone technology to supplement those boots on the ground. And then other than outsourcing corporate services to the Department of Home Affairs, what other measures will be used to offset the shortfalls in staff funding? Then with regard to the IEC, I wanted to know again, the IEC, of course, will have a lot to do in the year ahead, considering the new legislation and all the additional tasks they will have to be performing. So with regard to the e-voting pilot, which did not occur in the previous years, will there be money to roll this out towards 2024? And have we seen any donations to the multi-party democracy fund? And if so, how much? And how is the IEC planning to distribute this, considering that after 2024, we'll also have to give money towards independent candidates? And then with regards to your financial investment in your communications campaign, of course, this is very important because we need to see a greater involvement of young people in the elections. But I wanted to ask with regard to that investment, do we envisage seeing a greater number, or what is the target that we're targeting in terms of registered voters? Because I don't think we can set our target on 26 million. It should be increasing. Then with regards to the GPW, I wanted to ask, what is the anticipated turnaround time to implement the Ministerial Review Panel report and recommendations? What has led to the significant overspending on production and stores? And also the CFO mentioned GPW's bid to become a printer of choice. And I just wanted to know what has been the progress in terms of making sure that you print for all government departments. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Merve. Honorable Mulekwa.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Let me start by appreciating the presentation where I presented the four entities. I would like also to note all the presentation, especially the budget that has been presented. And Chairperson, I just want to check on the presentation of the IEC, given the lot of work that need to be done by the IEC, especially when the electoral amendment bill will be signed off. So I just want to check whether the IEC will be able to execute all the programs that are being presented in the presentation, given the limited resources that they have, because all those programs are very important, more especially as we are heading for the national and the provincial national election, Chairperson. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mulekwa. Honorable Pile.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Let me also appreciate and all of the presentations that were made. Chair, in respect of DHA, I must applaud the fact that we are still seeing budget allocations for mobile trucks. I think as a committee, we have been pushing this, especially even the minister has been carrying this mandate in having for us to roll out more of those trucks. I have one concern though on the very first presentation, and that was about 200 million that was going to be unspent. And my question is, why? Why is this money unspent and why is it going to be returned? And if so, can it not be a vote transfer or budget transfer so that it be able to accommodate, for example, mobile trucks or even anything else within the unit that can be utilized? Because the last thing we ever want is that's a huge amount of money to be unspent or returned. And then to find out if DHA has any unfunded vacancies and what is the plan, but also in respect of this financial year, the plan on filling in vacancies, because we do have a serious challenge of shortage of staff. The other one is that whether they've allocated a budget to accommodate for electricity outages, especially in respect of load shedding, backup systems, etc. And the last one on DHA is in respect of the CETA and the downtime in terms of network. Has that been budgeted for, and is that going to be something that the department is going to look at in this new financial year, particularly since we have many of our officers, if not all at times, experiencing network problems and challenges and downtime. And then in respect of BMA, I'm a bit concerned that the budget might not be sufficient. And what are the plans? Because we actually have planned or projected that it will be fully fledged and functioning. And if that is going to be the case, then the low budget for that for BMA, is that going to give us the outcome that we desire in respect of making sure that BMA is fully functional and fully fledged? In respect of GPW, we've previously received presentations about the imprint into other African countries. And the question is, what sort of revenue have we managed to get from that? And what is the plans going forward in terms of ensuring that GPW is marketed correctly? And if there's a budget allocation for marketing GPW to be able to increase revenue and to receive more revenue. And also, I think a big question is whether they would or have all of the documentation and information that is relevant to audit, and whether that's going to be met, because we've previously had challenges about having to ensure that audits are conducted for GPW timeously, and we don't want to see this occur again. And then the last one on IEC is just my concern again will be budgets that's too low, given or taken into consideration that the electoral amendment bill has been passed, and that there is going to be the inclusion of independent candidates. There's going to be much more extensive work that needs to be done. in respect of IEC when it comes to independence. And I just think that there has to be some kind of budget increase in respect of the elections being in 2024. And the second one is we've always been, as this committee, raising the concern about voter education and awareness. And I think that previously we've received reports that they couldn't do much due to budget constraints. Can we not, as this committee, ensure that there is some kind of allocation of budget in respect of that, particularly since there is an election coming up? Because there has to be extensive voter education, including the inclusion of the independent candidates and even explaining the electoral amendment bill to the citizens of the country. And I think it's important that there has to be some kind of accommodation made in respect of the IEC. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Pillay. Honorable Kanyile.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Chairperson, we acknowledge the presentations that we have received. I just have a few questions to the Department of Home Affairs. What I would like to find out is that what are the remaining goods and services to be procured for the Who Am I online project for 2023? And secondly, with regards to the interns that the department has employed, though I do believe there's still about 4,000 more that are still going to be employed, what is the department planning to do with the interns serving in the digitization project once the project of 1 year is done? And Chairperson, I think I saw a slide from the IEC as well that speaks to IEC sending please call me to voters. Can they please just enlighten us on what is the reason they are sending these please call me to voters? Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Honorable Kanyile. Honorable Hwase. Honorable Ruos.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to everybody for the presentations. Chair, I'm going to start with the Department of Home Affairs. I think the first issue is on the COE. And really, if we look at, after the digitization project, which is a special budget allocation in 2023, the COE then drops below 2022 levels for all the budget programs. So why is this the case for the citizenship program? And then do the immigration staff move to BMA, then come out of the COE? And does the COE then get reduced? Or do the immigration staff that go across to the BMA, does that COE then stay in Home Affairs and get used to fill other positions? I hope I'm clear in that question. Then if we look at the 839 million for the digitization project, I know we are now delayed because the delay in the release of funding. So if we can just get an idea of the key project milestones that we need to look out for to ensure that this project is then completed in time, and how are they going to accelerate that process now that it started a bit late? Then, Chair, I share the concern of Honourable Lizelle. It's a known fact we have porous borders. The BMA, these new officials, boots on the ground, they seem to be positioned at our border posts and not around them or along them to actually stop persons from coming in. And then we know that the SANDF is also under budget pressure. So I agree with the concern that our internal enforcement is neglected. And nothing at all is happening along our coastline. So I'd just like to get an understanding of what the financing outlook is for internal enforcement in the medium term. Then the committee received a report on the 12th of July, 2022 on the review of permits issued since 2014. And this indicated extremely serious problems. So widespread fraud, fake users created on the system, key logging, identity theft, and Home Affairs staff operating a visa fraud syndicate, as the report called it. I'm not sure that I see
any technology project or special project to address this, which I would have expected. So if I can just give an indication, are any of these shortfalls in that actually being addressed in some of the projects that are being mentioned here? Because this must surely be a critical IT project that must be taking place to close these gaps in these legacy systems that is allowing this fraud syndicate to operate within Home Affairs. Then I also, Chairperson, didn't see mention of the provision of power to all the officers. So my understanding is that right about half the Home Affairs front officers have backup power. So we talk about generators or UPSs, so that when there's load shedding, that they don't close down completely. Is there provision for this in the budget? If we can just get an indication on that, because I believe that's also absolutely critical. Then in terms of the BMA, I think it's not a surprise that it's underfunded, and we don't want to gloat about it. It's not good news. But I think we need to understand what is the current funding shortfall that we face, given that we're in a setup period, so the implementation period, and then there will be an operational period. So if we can just get clarity, what is the current funding shortfall for the full implementation of the BMA? And then what specific functions are not then being implemented at the moment because of the funding shortfall? And who will then implement these? Because we have legislation and it gives certain tasks to certain departments and obviously the BMA. So if we can just get an understanding of that, then what functions now cannot be funded and who's going to do them? You've mentioned shared services for the admin, but what else? Then in terms of the IEC, I'd just like to understand how long the additional 7,000 staff recruited for elections are employed by the IEC, because they seem to be budgeted for 2023-24 and 24-25. And then to what extent are elections expected to be more expensive now? I guess the IEC is almost doing a forecast, as they say. This is now becoming an election budget here. And then how will this affect candidate or party fees? Is it expected that these fees will stay the same, or will they have to go up to accommodate these additional expenses? Then finally, in terms of GPW, I think it's been years now that we've been talking about trips by executives to go and do business development for the GPW and get new business from the rest of Africa. And even though we had COVID during this term so far, people were continuing to do business online and have presentations, et cetera, et cetera. But I'd like to understand, what is the revenue forecast? Even if it's in the next 5-year period or whatever period that GPW is measuring this by, what is the sort of revenue outlook of all these exercises of going to conferences, of having these overseas trips to go and supposedly sell the services? What is the revenue forecast? Is there something coming in? What is the quantum of it? Then in terms of trade receivables, that stands, I see, at 211 million. And basically this is money owed to a business by its customers after sales. So I still don't understand why, if Home Affairs is the major customer of Government Printing Works, why they don't pay them when they receive the service, because 211 million, to my calculation, it's about 17% of total annual revenue. So why do these trade receivables then sit in GPW's books? Why does the Department of Home Affairs owe you money? Then you mentioned, and I might have misunderstood this, that you've pushed a 50 Rand and 3 cents savings per passport for the production. Yet in the last financial year, we've seen the doubling of the cost of the passport. And the argument given at the time is that we, or the Department of Home Affairs, has been subsidizing the taxpayer. And that is why they have to double this cost. So I just want to understand, if you're now pushing this saving, you've made 30% plus GP every year for the longest of times. Was it the case that these passports were always subsidized? How did you then make up that if you made such a lot of profit? And how does the doubling of the cost of the passport now affect your finances? Then the second last question, Chairperson, and thank you for your indulgence. since the first data loss of the financial data, I'd just like to understand how much has been spent in data recovery projects to recover this data, and where we are in this process. Are we done? Are we almost done? Is this affecting the next set of financials? And then where has the money been taken to pay for this expense? And then finally, Chair, we talk about the security printers bill, and it's been floating around for a long time. And I see that GPW is doing provincial consulting. But this committee for several years now has been proposing that GPW consult with the private sector on the impact and job losses if one goes ahead and has a security printers bill where all the government printing and secure printing gets done by GPW. So when are you going to be doing the private sector impact assessment? And do you believe it's a wise thing to do in the current economic climate, to actually go and put a bill in place that will take business away from the private sector in different parts of the country and give it to government? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Ross. Honorable Mohale. Honorable Madisimza.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I think most of the points have been covered by members. However, I also want to make an emphasis on the GPW, noting that in the past we would have had challenges with them for audits to be conducted in the entity. Now, I want to emphasize on the point Honorable Pillay would have made with regards to them, ensuring that we don't experience the same challenges or the problems that they had in the past do not reoccur. They keep emphasizing that they have a healthy financial status, though we know that they struggle to comply with the AG. Also, Chair, the GPW made mention of the less than much anticipated that the profits that they would have expected. But less is being said on what are the challenges or what prevented those profits to be realized, knowing that it's an entity that is able to generate its own revenue with regard to the services that they are able to provide to other entities. But they just mentioned that they did not make much, but nothing on what are the challenges therefore. Chair, I'm also concerned on the underspending that is being mentioned. What interventions will be put in place in order to improve the status? We cannot just accept being told that they are underspending these funds that are budgeted for and they are not being used. There must be interventions made in order to curb those challenges. Chair, my other concern is the bulk of monies that the Department of Home Affairs budgets for remunerations. But it is concerning when you check the department, you find that the Home Affairs officers are understaffed with regards to human resource. It's a great concern, and I want to urge the department to look into that. Whilst we want to ensure that service delivery is being provided to the citizens of South Africa, we cannot then have offices of Home Affairs left understaffed. It means down services will not improve. We know that we have a huge challenge with regards to the long queues. Now, part of it is because there isn't enough human resource or staff in the offices to can service the people, and we really need to look into that. I think most of the points have been made, and I'm covered extensively. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Madisimza. Honorable Bongani Bongo. Okay. Can I check Honorable Khwase and Honorable Mohale if they are back online? Thank you, members, for the comments on the presentation made. We're going to then request the responses or comments as follows. We'll request the Director General, and then we invite Commissioner Mashia Pata. We'll then invite CEO Fosi. Then we'll invite the Deputy Minister to comment on the issues arising from Home Affairs, BMA, and GPW. We'll then request Commissioner Muyabza and the team to deal with that. In the process, he will delegate either to the executive DG and the CO4C and the Commissioner Mashapata in terms of the responses that may be residing in a particular unit or division or an executive responsible. In that order, Director General.
Well, thanks, Chairperson, and thank you to the honorable members for the questions. Maybe let's start with the ones posed by Honorable Van der Merwe. The issue that you've raised around the decline in the budget for the BMA. In the presentation by the Commissioner and the CFO Chairperson, you would have noted that the decrease in the immigration budget, it's obviously due to the functional shift to the BMA. It's not just at Home Affairs. You would have noted that at agriculture, at forestry, at health, all those departments where there's a functional shift to the BMA, they'll therefore be impacted by that decrease in terms of the budget as they move towards the BMA. At Home Affairs, it means that all immigration officials that are currently at the ports of entry therefore move with the salary to the BMA. Now, as a result of that, or as a consequence of that, therefore the compensation of employees for the 24-25 financial year, which is your outer years, as you have indicated, Honorable Van der Merwe and also Honorable Roos, therefore starts reducing because of that functional shift. The CFO can add more. I don't think deputations will be impacted, Honorable Van der Merwe. You would have noted in the immigration budget, there's 456 million for under goods and services, amongst others, which assist the team in terms of deportations that need to continue. And maybe to deal with an issue that Honorable Modise has raised with regards to the under-resourcing of the department, as you indicated. I think Honorable Van der Merwe, you've also raised it. This committee will recall that you instructed us some times ago to work on a business case, which we came and presented before you. It was then submitted to Treasury, and noting the fact that our staffing levels were at sitting at around 39%. And in the business case, which was then approved by Treasury, we then received 266 million rand for this financial year, which enabled us to fill at least 762 positions, mainly with a bias towards civic services in particular, because that's where the bulk of our people receive their services. And of course, the other component then went to the immigration services. We have not stopped there, Chair. We are now working on a second business case, again for Treasury, to look at additional capacity, which we believe will be able to take us at least to 55%. If we were to look at the funding that we have received, it just takes us just about 42%, which is still far below. In particular, if we were to look at the footprint expansion, whether it's at the malls, whether it's in the mobile trucks and the offices that we're opening. So it's a matter that we remain seized with, in particular, to look at our expansion. And I suppose the BMA Commissioner will deal with issues related to SAPS, and also the issues around the transitional measurement arrangements between ourselves and the BMA. I think the CFO will deal with that. And then Honorable Molekwa, I think we've attempted to address some of the issues that you have raised. Honorable Pillay, the mobile trucks, the budget will not be impacted, as you will note that we increasing that mobile footprint. We've added just, I think this afternoon we should be receiving an additional 20 of those trucks. And then we're then placing another order for 100 as this committee recommended at some point that we're likely to get to more areas, in particular your far-flung areas, if we utilize mobile trucks. So it's something that we continue to work on. Of course, there'll be that tapping into the who am I line item, but also self-financing, because that comes from the other area. And then, of course, how we also procure additional passenger name recognition assistance to load shedding. We continue to innovate in terms of how we can improve or ensure that services are not disrupted. We're looking at all range of options, including inverters, batteries, where there's generators. We're looking at what else can we do in certain areas, including exploring hydrogen fuel cells, which was a partnership between ourselves and the Department of Science, Technology and Innovation. And I think one of the offices in Red Bank has already been fitted with the hydrogen fuel cells units to make sure that they continue to function irrespective of load shedding. And then Honorable Kanyile, with regards to the digitization program, you will recall that the program continues, given the fact that we received the funding quite late. We'll probably it's a program that will continue for the next 2 years as well. And then let me then invite my colleagues, starting with you, DDG Mavuso, to deal with the issues around system downtime and any other additional initiatives on load shedding, and then CFO on issues related to the PNR, and then DDG HR on the vacancies. Let me pause here for now. Thank you.
Okay, DDG Mavuso.
No, thank you very much, Chairperson.
DDG Mavuso.
Yes, Chair, can you hear me?
Yeah, who can hear you? Proceed.
No, thank you very much. Chair, just on the issue that was raised by Honorable Kanyile on the digitization, the program is 3 years, and the planning for the entire program started last year. So we are now obviously at the implementation phase, where with the first cohort that is already undergoing training. And then one of the things that we have done in the first cohort is that they will then be collating and preparing records that are situated in various provinces in preparation for the digitization of those records. So our expectation is that we will be fully running during the month of March and April. We'll then be able to demonstrate some of the milestones that we'll be achieving in that regard. And in the process, we also obviously recruiting the remaining number of graduates that are going to be in those facilities that we are getting ready for them to be able to start the process. We have a technology provider that is on site. So all the preparatory work is going according to plan. The only issue that I think the CFO did face is that the money that was allocated, unfortunately, was received very late from National Treasury. So it was rather unfortunate that, it came very late. But we are going to be having obviously some of the expenditure that are related to the project before the end of the financial year, but it will not be equivalent to the amount that has been allocated. So, Honorable Ross, in terms of the key milestones of the project that you need to be on the lookout for, So what we'll be indicating will be obvious on a quarterly basis, the number of records that have been digitized, the ability to retrieve those records. So it's something that we'll be able to demonstrate. We did indicate when we met with the minister last Friday that at the minimum, we will be having the first set of records that will be done at BVR, because we are setting up the first equipment for to digitize the record. By the end of March, we'll be able to demonstrate some of those records that would have been digitized. Thank you very much, Honorable Chair.
Thank you. CFO.
Chairperson, can you hear me?
Proceed, CFO. CFO, you can proceed. Okay, HR. DG.
Chairperson, my apologies. Chairperson, may I continue?
Yes, proceed. Yeah, you're better now. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson. My apologies again. Chairperson, did you ask me to respond on the PNR issue? The current year allocation for the passenger name recognition is 228 million rands, Chair. Chairperson, the passenger name recognition system is a subcomponent of what we call the advanced passenger processing system. So this enables us to tell you when a person books a ticket to South Africa to come and visit here, we will know at which hotel the person will stay. We'll be able to track him and we'll know how he banked and how he's planning to go back. Chairperson, unfortunately, that system is provided to us by a sole supplier. It's a Swiss-based company. We could not get the approvals from National Treasury to engage and appoint the same service provider for the new passenger name recognition system. And we were advised then to go out on an open tender. We have started that process, Chairperson, to go out on a passenger name recognition module for that. It's yeah. So, Chairperson, we will be unable to spend the 228 million rands in the current financial year, given where we are and the process that still needs to be undertaken. That money is earmarked by National Treasury, but we have already asked National Treasury to unearmark the funds that will then enable us to spend that 228 million rands. Chairperson, if you allow me, I'm just going to deal briefly then with the 500 more for digitization. Mr. Mavuso has already said that it's unlikely that we will spend that money since we only received it in January and we have only now started to make appointments. We are already in discussions with National Treasury to roll over that money that will be left unspent, because our allocation for the digitization project in the incoming financial year, 23-24, for digitization is insufficient to cover 10,000 youth. So if we do not get the rollover, we will have to cut down on our numbers, and that's why National Treasury has been supporting us with a request for rollovers, Chair. Chairperson, the last issue has been just on the to explain to Honourable Ruiz that given that BMA will be a Schedule 3A entity effective 1st of April 2023, a BMA will then be creating its own COE ceiling. As a consequence, the Home Affairs COE ceiling will reduce, as DG has already explained. Chairperson, thank you very much. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much. HR. DG, can I come back to you? Okay. I think those were comments from Home Affairs. DG, there's a matter that the HR has to respond. I'm trying to get a sense if she's in attendance. DG Mavuso?
Chair, it looks like DG, DGHR is not on the call.
Okay.
Chair, maybe just to be specific, maybe we might attempt to respond to the issue that you wanted to respond to. Maybe if Chair can just reflect on it, I might have missed it.
Okay, let's proceed. We'll come back. Let's invite Commissioner Masiapata.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair, and of course the committee members for the questions. The questions that we have recorded from the BMA side came from Honorable van der Merwe, Honorable Pillay, as well as Honorable Ruos. So let me then start this way by responding to Honorable van der Merwe and Honorable Ruos on issues that pertains to the SAPS. And I just want to start by reminding the committee members in terms of, I would say, the kind of work that we need to be doing. Honorable members will remember that as the Border Management Authority, we are supposed to, I would say, function in two distinct areas. One is the port of entry, which is the port itself inside, and the other area is called the law enforcement area. So the law enforcement area in this instance will talk about outside the port. So outside the port is well defined in law, and that is 10 kilometers out of the port, going sideways on the borderline, but also 10 kilometers going inside South Africa. All of that is defined at the border law enforcement area. The other area, which is a bit specialized, and that particular area is also part of the law enforcement area, is what we call the vulnerable segment on the borderline. Those are the areas where we have border communities. In other words, in areas where the borderline is competing with civilian activities in that area. Those are the areas, for instance, where you will also find what we call the foot and mouth fence, which is basically to deal with animal movement. And that work is what we are taking over from the Department of Agriculture. I thought I needed to start there in terms of that appreciation of the areas of work. Now, let me then come back into the question around SAPS in relation to the BMA. Firstly, committee members will remember that Section 4, subsection 2 of the BMA Act indicates that when it comes to border law enforcement work in the space, that work will be exclusively done by the officials of the Border Management Authority. And yourselves as the legislators, you have actually put it very explicitly. And the intention you had was to make sure that there is no confusion in as far as that responsibility is concerned. So that particular work, in the simple language that we use, we call it access control responsibilities. That work, as we speak, is done by the SAPS. Now, the question here from Honorable Ruos, which then conflates together with the question by Van der Merwe, is what are the portfolios that we will not be able to cover? And what are we going to be doing pertaining to that? And that is what goes together with the question about the article in the Sunday Times about some bit of issues between the officials on the ground. So let me then answer it this way, Honorable Chair. Firstly, the initial intention of this particular process, and you will be aware of it, was that officers or SAPS officials who are deployed at the port environment, because what they've been doing is called access control, that is the responsibility we need to take. The initial intention was that those officials will be part of the integration into the Border Management Authority. But of course, as we started the engagements across the departments, as we have also briefed yourselves, it became very clear that we were not succeeding in getting SAPS officials to be integrated into the BMA. And the rationale was understood at the broader leadership level, is that the SAPS will need that capacity inside the country, as it were, on the basis that they are, in terms of the metrics, they are short in a way. And that's what that was understood. But the reality is there is money then that is allocated for that function in the port. And that particular money, we couldn't get it from Treasury. So automatically what it means is that particular work, we will not have the capacity, Honorable Ruos, to be able to do it as the BMA. We are doing some aspect of it on the basis of the 200 border guards we have, and also the 400 that we are looking at bringing in the next financial year. But we will not be able to cover. If we can be practical, The SAPS work in terms of access control is done by between 6,000 to around 6,000 officials as we speak across the port. And if we are to bring the 400, we will have 600. So there is no way 600 can do the work that is done by 6,000 or so. So it basically means that we'll not be able to take over that portfolio, unfortunately. Now, what it means is the SAPS will then continue to do that work, which will then mean that as we increase the border guards presence, we will then gradually take over that responsibility. And I can also confirm that there are still further discussions between the ministers around these particular issues and around the mechanics in this particular instance. Now, with all practicalities, when there is a bit of a challenge at the higher level, operationally it becomes a challenge. And that is where the media article came from. And the issue here is the border guards are declared peace officers by the Minister of Justice within the context of Criminal Procedure Acts. They can do search, seizure, arrest as provided for in the BMA Act. So on that basis, it means the work that the border guards are doing is exactly as the work that the SAPS are doing. And that on its own, especially in the areas where we have deployed the border guard, it then creates a bit of an operational challenge. And that is why, or that is where the article came from. As I have said, that is the issue that is being addressed. And the meetings are actually going on to be able to get that, that addressed. But the other issues, just quickly, Honorable Chair, in terms of the other portfolios, we have indicated in our initial provision that we are looking at what Honorable van der Merwe calls drone technology to be able to be brought into the space so that it can complement the boots on the ground that we have. But unfortunately, as you have seen, with the allocation of 250 million, we will not be able to get to that level. By the way, we had already started engaging with DINEL through AMSCO, and they were starting to indicate the kind of technologies they have and the kind of drones that they have, which will then be suitable. But of course, all of those will require financial resources, which we won't be able to have. Now, in answering the question, what are we going to be doing then in the intervening period? I think the committee members will remember that the SNDF had been allocated 3.7 billion just for border control responsibilities, if you remember from the Minister of Finance speech. Part of what they will be doing is to buy drone technology for the same purpose. So I will say for now, we will try to tap into that ability of the SNDF to also try to share some data arising from that technology, particularly in the 10-kilometer space or radius around the port, which is our area of responsibility, including those vulnerable areas that I have responded to. So in terms of technology, in the interim, that's what we will do. But we do hope that as we go along, we should be able to get some bit of additional resources to be able to deal with those. Maybe just to also indicate, Honorable Chair, to the question by Honorable Ruas, which I know, by the way, that Honorable Ruas raises this point all the time. And this is the issue around the coastline. Like we have indicated previously, Honorable Ruas, for now, the focus has been in the land ports. In terms of work, we are covering all the ports, meaning land port, seaports, and airports. But in terms of the line, we are covering the land ports, meaning the land line. But in terms of the sea line, we don't have that, let alone the additional resources to do that work. But we haven't even put effort in that because we had actually prioritized the other side. So hence we had said that the issue of the coastline, meaning the bringing in of the Coast Guard, is the second phase of this particular process. And that will also go with the financial resources to enable us to do that particular part, as it were. So I suppose those were the issues. If you can just try to quickly go back in terms of what Honorable van der Merwe had indicated, to talk about what other measures that we have on the ground to be able to offset the staff funding issues in terms of the outsourcing of the corporate functions to the DHA. I can only say in this particular question, Honorable van der Merwe, we are looking at the possibility of requesting departments to give us some bit of seconded officials across the 4 departments in particular, additional to what Home Affairs will be doing to us. And that issue is something that has started being engaged on after we have received the final allocation letter, which then makes it clear that we will not be able to fund our permanent structure, as I've indicated earlier. So we'll ask the department to second officials where they can, so that we can be able to run this organization in the manner that is supposed to be. In terms of the issues raised by Honorable Pillay, whether based on the current financial that we have, will we be able to get the results out of the BMA as anticipated by the committee and of course by the country, I suppose. And the reality of it is it will be the minimum that we will get, not much of the maximum as initially planned in as far as this process is concerned. But we will be able to bring efficiencies in the ports. We will be able to integrate the standard operating procedures. We will be able to start addressing the vulnerabilities that create corruption, fraud, and all of that in the ports. Those issues in the ports will be able to effectively deal with. But when it comes to issues, for example, out of the ports, we will be more cooperating with the SANDF to try and close that particular space because of these financial realities that we are sitting at. Maybe lastly, with your permission, Honorable Chair, is to ask the Deputy Commissioner for Corporate Services, Madam Tupana, just to reflect on the shortfalls in terms of our initial request versus the 250 that we got. Thanks, Honorable Chair. With your permission, Madam Tupana.
The shortfall.
Yeah, I think you're not audible.
Can you hear me, Chairperson?
Yeah, you are better now. Thank you.
Better. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Chair. I was just reflecting on the question that Honorable Ruos had raised with regard to the shortfall. The figures that are on the slides are the figures that we had worked out to be the shortfall. And that which is reflected as a shortfall on the slide is excluding the monies that are coming from various departments. Because initially, when we put up a business case to Treasury, we were not even looking into what is coming from other departments. That was a given. So we were looking at capacitating the Border Management Authority, looking at its mandate and what is it that we need BMA, and therefore that shortfall of a 10 million.
Commissioner, I'm not sure if you can be stable. It was a network. You keep
the network, Chair. I'm sorry. Yes. Yeah. Let me just try to summarize by indicating the shortfall is flagged in the figures that we see, and what I can just add in relation, in addition to what the Commissioner had indicated on the implications of this shortfall. Commissioner touched on how it compromises access control, how it would compromise technology, meaning border patrol technology, but also there is a systems issues in terms of technology, systems integration towards a single window within the ports is again something else that would be compromised with this shortfall. And for that, continuous engagements with the Department of Home Affairs and SARS would then take place to ensure that this aspect is not compromised. But just briefly to indicate, the shortfall are the figures that are reflected on the slides. That is the money that we couldn't get, that we had hoped to get the Border Management Authority off the ground. With the compromises that are being made, receiving this kind of support in terms of finance, facilities and property management, salaries payment and related services from the department is what we'll continue to get to ensure that the mandate is not entirely.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Mashapata, are you done?
No, thank you very much. Indeed, we are done. Maybe just in case it was not that audible, the actual shortfall is around 10 billion over a 5-year period. which was our initial request, which in terms of the financial year, we're looking at around 2.6 billion, but of course we got 250 million. So that is in short, the issues. Thank you very much, Chair, as well as the committee members.
Thank you very much, CEO Fosi.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Let me also thank honorable members for the questions that they've raised. Chair, allow me, I will start with the responses. However, I'm going to request through your indulgence, Mr. Ngubane to come in to address the footprint expansion related questions together with the revenue generated. CFO will then cover the finance related matters. To the questions raised by Honorable van der Merwe, the ministerial review panel, we have started with the implementation and we are anticipating to complete the implementation process by the end of the 23-24 financial year. However, this is going to be in line with our implementation model and the action plan that I've referred to in the presentation. And the work streams are actually busy with facilitating implementation and developing reports in this regard. Save for those specific milestones where the report was specific that we should be able to run them over a particular period of time. However, the implementation model and the plan has forecasted the date of the end of the financial year 23-24. The issue of progress to print for all government departments, this is in line with the integrated marketing and stakeholder relations strategy that we are implementing. We have already started printing for departments across all spheres of government to date, as well as their entities. However, what we have done to actually realize where our revenue generating customers are coming from, we have clustered them. We have the top 10 customers that we can talk about in terms of revenue generation, like DHA, SABS, DBE, higher education, SASA, DPWI, correctional services, and so forth. And then we have those departments that would have a product printed with us over time, and they will only occasionally come and print with us. However, our local footprint expansion plan is underway, and I guess Mr. Ngubane will talk to that some more in his response as well. But we have realized that most of the departments have been coming to print with us, and we have made progress in that regard, but continue to do so. The issues raised, the questions raised by Honorable Rose on the revenue quantum, particularly from our footprint expansion plan, I need to indicate, Honorable Rose, that we have adopted a multifaceted approach. Since the advent of COVID, we've got numerous online engagements with countries within the SADC as well as the African continent to make sure that we market our products as well as the services. And those have actually yielded some results because we've seen them bear fruit in terms of those countries coming to visit Government Printing Works to come and view our services and products with an intention of coming back to print with us. So those visits, what we have done, they would then invite GPW to also come to their countries to view their either small printing facilities or to come and engage with other departments in their countries to come and market ourselves with a view of those countries or those departments in the countries to come and also print with Government Printing Works. But those have been very few in terms of us having to do return visits. But central to this model has been to engage embassies and High Commissioner's office located in Pretoria. And we've invited members from those offices to come and engage Government Printing Works. And there was another platform just to ensure that we engage on a wider scale without having to spend much on traveling costs. Also on the issue of the data loss, the data recovery in particular, we have engaged several companies, I think 3 in particular, Hewlett-Packard, which was the OEM for the EVA hardware, CSSI, which were data recovery specialists, as well as SSA. I need to record that GPW did not raise any purchase orders for all these above organizations, therefore no costs were incurred. And to date, there are no costs that are budgeted on the recovery of data. And therefore GPW will not be spending on data recovery because we are recreating our systems and we are making sure that we're re-automating our systems that had crashed with the previous system failure. Honorable Rose, in terms of the private sector impact assessment, I need to just indicate that we are a member of Printing SA, which is a coordinating body for all the printing, publication, as well as manufacturing sector within the country. And therefore, our model has never been in competition with the private sector. In fact, it supports SMME development. We have accredited private companies that we've contracted to come and print certain products on behalf of GPW to ensure their development as well as sustainability. Further, our procurement goals that we've set for ourselves promote the development of those smaller companies, particularly those owned by the previously disadvantaged groups, so that they also can access the market, and we do our tenders to them so that they can also benefit and we develop them further and sustain them in terms of the printing sector itself. So I just want to pause here, Chair, and ask Mr. Ngubane to talk further to the issue of imprint into SADC as well as the revenue generated as asked by Honorable Pillay. And the CFO will across the board take all the finance related questions through you, Chairperson. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ngubane.
Thank you, Chairperson, and good morning to all. Just talking to the issue of expansion, starting with the local market. We have, I think, about 28 departments, more or less, in our country. Of course, we print for all of them. And we also publish government gazettes for all of them. But I think where the difference is that some are key. They order in large volumes and quantities, and then others are really small. And I think CEO has covered that point quite well. So you have, for instance, I think Home Affairs, SAPS, Education, and so on and so forth. Those are the key ones. I think we have about 14 of them, where we even have service level agreements. They order in high volume. I think we are covered and comfortable in that space. And then you have the medium-sized account customers. I think we in the region of about 9 departments in that space, the water and sanitation, agriculture, DPSA, human settlements. So our expansion plans are focused on these because we do understand that there's potential to grow, and some have documents that are or can be termed security documents, which we feel should really be printed by the government printing works instead of being exposed to the private sector. And then you have the very, very small customers. They will come in once in a while, probably once in a year, once in 2 years. The small business, public works, they really don't have a lot of volume, but this is, that they bring to us. But this is also one area where we are targeting, because when you dig deep, you find that they have, especially the high security products, that we then can protect and print within government. So those that will be the local environment. And if you go international in the SADC region, we have, and maybe let me start by stating what we have done in this current financial year. The total revenue that we have earned in this current financial year is about 397,555. It is small, but it is better than what we did in the previous year, and we are focusing on it because that's where the big potential is for our growth. And this is for various institutions in Eswatini. I'm talking the IVT, Department of Trade, basically, and labor. I think it's in the space. We have the University of Eswatini, We have also the Police Academy in Matsapa. Those are the three customers that we've printed for in Eswatini. We also have printed for Namibia the birth certificates that I think amounted to a total of about close to 330,000. So this is the space in SADC that we want to grow into, focusing primarily on passports and IDs, as well as other certificates and visas. But the primary focus is IDs and passports, because that's where the biggest revenue will come from. We have engaged countries in this financial year like Angola, Mozambique, DRC, Tanzania, Lesotho, and of course, Eswatini. We are to engage Kenya, Ethiopia. We have an engagement with Kenya and Ethiopia in the next two weeks, and also planning on engaging Botswana and Zambia. In terms of budgets, budget allocations for business development, which link to all the sales activities as well as R&D, we have, I think, CEO touched on the plans. If you look at the polycarbonate assembly plant research and development, that is our plan for the next financial year, budgeting 1 million to look at doing a research on the feasibility of this. It's been long coming, I know, but finally we are now getting our hands on it, associated with doing some study tours so we can truly understand how feasible it is for us to get into the space. But it is important because should we put up a polycarbonate assembly plant, we will basically be integrating backwards, and it will be easy then for us to produce passports and IDs quicker for the African states than if we were to in-source that material as part of our production process. And then just finally, because there's a question on spending on business development and R&D, just a few figures to show what we are planning for the next financial year, 23-24, as well as 24-25 in terms of research and development. The budget, which also was presented by CFO, is about 1.57 million, and then 24-25 about 1.64 million to be able to go to conferences, obtain skill, and also sell ourselves. I think that covers it, Chairperson and CEO. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, CFO.
Thanks, Chair. There was two questions on expenditure and audit. I'll combine them. The first one was on another expenditure on production and stores. If you look at the slide, you'll see that it falls under cost of sales is the one that shows an underspent or expenditure of 61%, which is still below the 75%. The other one on production stores is under our normal administrative expenditure. That's the one that shows an overspend. The percentage is about 196, but the quantum is about 2.4 million. And that relates mostly to the rollout of our security systems as a national key priority. So that's where it lies, and we have taken a position to increase our security systems as well as our general security. But we will see. We'll have to find a way of offsetting it against other expenditure towards the end of the financial year within the total within the total goods and services budgets. The issue of the audits, let me be very clear that we've got a disclaimer, and the disclaimer will always be there with the opening balances. So the AG will never be able to really put a lines on the opening balances. Our in-year financials, they might put a lines on, but the loss that we've had on the general ledger going backwards is going to be extremely difficult for us to recover from that. And I think I've made the point quite before. So we're looking at that GRAP 3 exemption from National Treasury to assist with that, so that we have a base year from which we can work going forward. We've worked with the AG consistently and quite a bit in the last 18 months for them to also get an understanding of our business, making available all our lead schedules that we have to do for the financials. At the moment, they are still also auditing and also obviously looking at their business processes and doing some analysis. We've got a system going with the AG in terms of protocol agreements and turnaround time of submitting information. And at the moment, we are up to date with that. But obviously, as the audit rolls out, it's going to intensify, quite a bit. I just need to also say that when it comes to the audits, and I think the chief audit executive that mentioned that, is that we will be audited internally by the AG and also having to put up financials by the end of May, all at one go within the finance unit. And we are up to the task. It's just going to be a stretch. It's a stretch for us as well. But we put in what we hope to be enough capacity on that. The issue on trade receivables, it's not only DHA that owes us. Just keep in mind that most of our departments are supposed to pay within 30 days. We've had some issues, obviously, with the data synchronization that we've addressed. The receivables were actually, quite significantly higher, and we started to deal with that going forward. But it's not only the DHA that will owe us, but also other departments. But I think looking at the number, we still feel that is manageable as it stands now. The discounts to DHA, the way it will affect us obviously is on our revenue projections, and you will see that going forward for the first year, with next year 23-24, we've got 1.6 billion of revenue projected or expected, and that's the same number that we probably had in 1920. Our cost structure might differ from DHA, so they would obviously pass on some of the costs, but they might have other OAs that we're not aware of. So I wouldn't be able to speak with authority on the cost that DHA would charge out to the customer. Joe, I think that would be probably the most of the finance questions. Thanks.
Thank you very much, colleagues, for your responses. I'll invite the Deputy Minister to respond on some of the issues which are outstanding. DM?
No, thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. I think that the team has responded sufficiently to the technical questions that were raised by some of the members. I think on the HR issue with the DHA, we'll forward the response in writing to yourself. Firstly, on the Ellen office incident, yes, we'd like to confirm that there was an incident that took place on the 23rd of February this year, where staff and members of the community were held hostage. The issue pertains to a male person who had applied for an LRB case, which is late birth registration. And whilst we were processing that issue, the father, who they were supposed to do a paternity test of DNA with, eventually passed away. But we have since, when trying to conclude the issue, discovered that the person, whilst he was processing this LRB case, already was in possession of a green barcode ID under a different name, which then draws suspicion to the issue. And that might also mean that we have to investigate the issue a bit further. We are lucky that no one was actually hurt on the incident. We'll then investigate further as it pertains to him applying for an LRB case whilst already in possession of a green barcoded ID, which raises flags with us as to the legitimacy of the application, which also contributes to us having to take longer in dealing with LRB cases, because they are an area that is often abused for fraud and corruption, as well as identity corruption. So that is what we can say for now around the issue of the LMA office. On the issue of the BMA, you will note that there is going to be a move of functions, and I think the DG dealt with that issue quite very well, of functions from immigration to the Border Management Authority, but not all functions are going to move. Some of the issues that I think Honorable Lizelle was concerned about, yes, indeed, they will remain with the Home Affairs. For instance, you have your inspectorate unit, thinking at the top of my head, that will remain. But as we are shifting these other units, it means you are shifting people, it means you are shifting budgets and so on. And also there's going to be other departments that will be doing the same. I think I also alluded to this issue on some of the few portfolio committees that we've dealt with. So there will be that shift and lowering in terms of the budget of the immigration unit as those officials move. COE as well as equipment, goods that were supposed to purchase meant initially for immigration, now they will move to the BMA. On the issue of self-financing is the amount that we raise ourselves as a department from the payments pertaining to identity documents, passports, and so on and so on. All that revenue that we collect, we then redeploy and use that particular revenue in the main for expansion of footprint and so on and so forth. So I thought I had to explain those ones. The delay, which I think was not perfectly dealt with, the delay on the issue of the digitization project is in the main as a result of us receiving funding late from Treasury. Yes, commitments were made, but ultimately we did not receive the funding on time as we would have thought we were going to receive it, which means we had to delay the process of recruitment because we could not recruit people whilst money is not sitting in your bank. So that's what caused those particular delays. But we are doing our best to catch up with it, and eventually the project will be concluded with the speed that we need to conclude it with. And I think overall, when it comes to Home Affairs, we have maintained very good, prudent financial systems over the past. We have not regressed. Yes, we have been quite consistent in terms of performance, but now our aim is to sort of go a bit higher towards a level of clean audit. So we are managing our finances well. We will continue to lobby for more funding for the BMA. And I think it's some of the issues that we have raised with the portfolio committee that, yes, we need more funding, particularly for the entire security cluster. But for us, it needs to be directed more towards the Border Management Authority, because it is a similar situation with SARS. Because you know very well that when you put money in SARS, which has been our approach, is that when you put money and resources in SARS, you sort of enhance your revenue collection. And we believe the same, as you put in more money in the BMA, you reduce your illicit trade, which means trading within the country becomes more formal and you increase your revenue. So it's not just money that is going away, but it is money that can have spin-off in terms of economic development. We'll continue our work. We do acknowledge that the issue of GPW has some issues, but we are already putting up strategies in place to deal with the overall performance financially of GPW, particularly on the issue of lost data, on the accounting treatment, on how those transactions need to be treated and how we deal with the prior years where we do not have data. There are engagements that are continuing with Treasury in that particular regard. I think I will stop there. Most of the issues have been taken care of by the technical team, and I would like to thank the entire team from GPW, from the BMA, and also for the Department of Home Affairs for their continued service to us. And thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Deputy Minister. We're now going to invite Commissioner Miepza, the chairperson of IEC.
Chairperson of the session, let me not waste time and invite the CEO to deal with the questions. I will deal with questions that may be outstanding. I have noted the questions, but I'm sure the CEO and his team have noted the questions. There are members of the commission that I will check with if we have dealt with everything else. CEO, please proceed with the answers.
Thank you, Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee and Chair of the Commission. Mawethu will start with the voter education related questions, and the CFO will deal with the financial questions, and I'll then sweep with the rest. Thanks.
Thank you, Chairperson. Mawethu here. Good morning to all the members of the committee and everyone else. In terms of our voter education plans, we have a combination of integrated activities and methodologies that we will do as the Commission. Obviously, our target is still the young electorate of the country, particularly those young members of our community who have not voted before, who would be registering for the first time, basically your first-time voters. But given our new electoral system, basically every member of our electorate becomes a target person for voter education and our communications campaign. Now, what we have as a combination of approaches is first your community engagement activities, where we go out to various gatherings within communities and do voter education activities and exercises. And for that, we are putting the capacity that was indicated in our presentation of the MOCs and the DFs who are adding on our pool of permanent staff members who are doing duty at a municipal level. And with those engagements, we hope to reach broadly all our communities. We have located the activities of this component at a voting district level and a wide impact in terms of the work that we would do. The second focal point and activity is obviously dealing with our vulnerable groups, in particular the disability sector, where we will have similar community-based engagements with them as part of our voter education and voter information programs. We have found that radio still gives us a better reach in terms of voter education. And we will continue a radio-based engagement using community radio stations and using our partnership with the public broadcaster, the SABC, to have those educational programs focused on encouraging the electorate participation in our democratic electoral processes. Now, when we move out of radio, we continue our new area of voter education platforms, which is now voter education based on digital platforms. We are using, obviously, your social media platforms, your Google platforms, as well as your Meta platforms that are available in the country and popularly used by youngsters or those who have access to digital platforms. And our key areas there is sharing information using animation, sharing information using chatbots, as well as the conferencing facilities that these platforms provide to create dialogue
for those who participate in those platforms to engage with our content and our activities. Lastly, the partnership with SABC does include beyond radio, their television platforms, where we are able to still continue posting educational material. Now, this is also extended by their digital platforms available to them, whether it's their Facebook page or Twitter pages or online news platforms that they've made available for us to continue with education programs. We also do have focused education programs. The one is with the school curriculum, where we have a memorandum with the basic education, where we go into schools and we encourage civic education and citizenship responsibility. That is coupled with a major campaign that is once a year in April, our Democracy Month, where we focus then on what we call a schools education program. This voter education approach is supported by our communications campaign, which basically uses all platforms. We're keeping the traditional platforms, newspapers, billboards, and posters, plus a lot more on digital platforms, just to popularize a particular education campaign we're doing at a time, and it's supported by those, by that content. Now, lastly, honorable members, the content of our voter education is largely still about why participate, why vote, and which is a question that needs to be answered by our interaction and dialogue in voter education in order to encourage participation. We've got to be encouraging our electorate to have a purpose in participating and to understand their responsibility in participating in our electoral democracy. Yes, we do face a number of challenges with that purpose, and together with the work that is done by civil society, by other state departments to communicate and encourage participation, we do reach quite a number of our citizens. It will also be coupled with the how to participate, given the new arrangements that we now have in our electoral environment. Obviously, the third ballot coming in with the new electoral system is going to be a key focus of this work. And secondly, the amendment that was done to Section 24A, which is voting outside your voting district, that will receive a lot more focus. Obviously, there's a whole lot more communication and education that we need to do with the aspects of candidates and nomination processes that we will pick up as specific campaigns that we would do. There was an indication by honorable members probably of considering additional resources for purposes of voter education and awareness. This would be welcome. It will just augment the capacity and the plans that we currently have as the Commission. Thank you, CEO. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, through Chair, the CFO.
Thank you, CEO. I'll just be very quick. On the question, are we able to execute the 4 programs? The response is yes, dependent on National Treasury actually approving our proposed anticipated rollover. I think that's very important. I think I must also emphasize that the amendment to the bills were also factored in to our budget processes. On the comment about the additional funding, I think we do definitely would welcome that. I think more than anything. Then on the last question that is asked around the finances, To what extent is the election process becoming expensive? I think without putting a number to it on the ground, it is becoming expensive. I mean, if I can just list factors that contribute, amendments to the bill, any technology enhancements, anything that we do in terms of automating the election process would increase. And then also be mindful that when we do procure, we procure from the open markets, and those prices have factored certain inputs, inflation, just to name one. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Then to deal with the balance, the e-voting question, I think the Portfolio Committee will remember that ahead of the 2021 elections, we had proposed an empowering provision in the amendment to allow for the possibility of a pilot. The Portfolio Committee took the view that such innovation was not timely at that point, and instead proposed that we needed to engage in a workshop about that subject of electronic voting. We have since written to the Secretary of the committee to ask for an opportunity to engage in that workshop, and hopefully from then outline a process with timelines about what needed to be done to take forward the issue of electronic voting. So that's really where that matter is at in relation to its advancement through the parliamentary program. Of course, on our side, research is continuing. We're looking at different types of technologies that are available under the rubric of electronic voting. But in a sense, we are waiting to engage with yourselves on the subject. We've also noted the interest of the committee in undertaking study visits. We think that is necessary so that when we engage, we are all having some experiences on the subject. The donations to the Multi-Party Democracy Fund, indeed, this is a very strategic innovation in the party funding regulatory environment, because it allows for corporates, it allows for citizens to make a contribution to entrench multi-party democracy. It's very important in our constitutional design for all political forces to be resourced to compete on a fair basis. So the Multi-Party Democratic Fund serves that purpose. Since it was instituted, there's been approximately contributions to the value of 7.5 million. Firstly, and quite admirably, there have been two citizens who've made contributions. First, Mr. Paul Graham, formerly the executive director of IDASA, made a contribution of 1,000 rand. But I think that was a way of really saying, as citizens, we need to own our own democracy and fund the operations of our political parties. And he was followed by the former senior official at SARS, Mr. Ivan Pillay, with a contribution of 5 grand. Then there's been two big corporates. Vodacom made a contribution of 5 million, and Standard Bank a contribution of 2.5 million. So you can say overall, over the 2 financial years, there's been a 7.5 million contribution. Of course, it's not enough, because the need out there is quite huge. The Commission is not sitting on its laurels. We're engaging with all corporates. We're inviting citizens who can to make contributions. We've started the program now to engage with the high net worth individuals to really enthuse them to make a contribution to this fund. Now, how do we distribute this? There's a defined formula in the electoral prescript. There's an equity portion as well as a proportional portion. So that's the manner in which the funds were dispersed to represented political parties. Of course, with the advent of the introduction of independence, that formula will need to be amended, and that we hope that the committee will deal with it in terms of the planned amendments, planned consequential amendments. So we have some ideas, and those ideas will be brought to the fore for your consideration as the portfolio committee. Now, the communication campaigns and the registration targets. You see, the presentation did indicate that the Commission has committed to 2 national voter registration weekends, wherein we open the total fleet of voting stations, 23,000 of them. Now, this is important because of any other modality of registration, opening voting stations is the most accessible for people, because you're opening voting stations where people live. And in a sense, it's a modality that is not dependent on you having access to data, you having access to a phone, you having access to any other amenity. So you just walk and you just wake up, walk to the voting station in your community. So it's a very important equalizing opportunity, as it were, for all citizens of the Republic. We, hence the Commission is providing for 2 such opportunities to maximize possibilities for people to enlist on the voters' roll. But that is not enough. We have the online facility. It works on, it's available on a 24/7 basis. You access it at your leisure. We're running a campaign at the moment precisely because we are alive to the need to capture the young market, which is predisposed to the use of digital platforms, which is predisposed to the use of cell phones in the normal course of conversations daily. So that's what we're trying to do. So we're going to be having these periodic campaigns to promote the use of the online facility. Now, the Deputy CEO also spoke about the tertiary education, civic education program, which we launched last year at the Advanced University. That program is also continuing. We will be on the 7th of March this year in Grahamstown to launch this year's program. Now, that is not only about engaging in debates about civic education, it also offers students in tertiary institutions a registration opportunity. So all our tertiary institutions, all our TVET colleges, and so on will be visited in terms of that program. Now, the target we will provide saying when we come before the committee to present the APP. The please call me, no, we don't we don't have a please call me facility, but we do, of course, communicate with voters through SMS when certain circumstances arise. For instance, in the course of a by-election, we analyze the registration patterns of people. And if there are those that are incorrectly registered, whose addresses locate those voters outside of the boundaries of that ward. In that case, we have to correct their registration. But before we do so, we send them SMSs to notify them of that fact and ask them to present themselves to the local office of the IEC to register or go online and register themselves properly, failing which we then are empowered in law to change their registration detail. But we don't ask people to call us back. How long is the staff expansion program? It's an average of 13 months over 2 financial years. So the idea is to start engaging staff from about May and with the for 13 months. And the recruitment will be starting. Our recruitment plans and so on are now being finalized to be shared with provincial colleagues who are really responsible for running the recruitment processes to engage those staff. Will election deposits increase? We have indicated before that we will run a public consultation process before the determination of election deposits. So that process is yet to commence. But the deposits are not intended to finance the election operations. They really are there to ensure that there is no frivolity in the electoral contest, and that the people who raise up their hands for participation are people who are serious and not just involving themselves for fun purposes. So we can't answer the issue of the quantum at the moment, but we can indicate that there will be a process that involves an element of public participation. And then the commission, having had the views of the public, will then make a determination on that. Chairperson of the Commission, I think we have addressed the questions that members of the Portfolio Committee had for the Electoral Commission. Thanks, Chair. I revert to you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Miota.
Thank you, Chairperson of the committee. I think the CEO, if I've listened to the answers carefully, there may be 2 issues that have not been responded to. The first is the issue of the 7,000 staff members, additional staff members, and how long we intend employing them. I think the CEO is best placed to deal with that if we haven't dealt with it. The second issue is the issue that was raised about us allegedly sending please call me's to voters. This is a matter we don't do. But I thought that CEO just deal with the 7,000 and the please call me, and then we have dealt with all the matters.
Yeah, I think the CEO has dealt with this. Please call me. If you can refresh on the 7,000 CEO.
Yes, indeed. Thanks, Chairperson of the committee. Yes, the 7,000 approximate staff members that we are engaging, the period, it's a fixed term engagement process for a period of approximately 30 months running over 2 financial years. Thank you, Chair.
Fantastic, Chairperson. We are covered. My colleagues, I've checked with them. Commissioners, they are fully covered as well, and so am I. Thank you indeed.
Okay, thanks very much, colleagues. Thank you, IEC, Commissioner Miapsa, with all commissioners and the CEO and the executive. Thank you, Deputy Minister, and the entire team of BMA, Commissioner Mashapata, the CEO of Government Printing Works, and the Director General, and all the supporting team for the presentation today. And also thank members of the committee, honorable members, for their contributions and also comments on the issues that are arising or arise from the presentation. We want to appreciate the continuous good work of all the stakeholders, the IEC, the GP, Government Printing Works, BMA, where there are weaknesses, the committee has expressed its concerns. We've noted the shortcomings in terms of the budget allocation to the BMA. And I think if you recall, when you're presenting in terms of the structure operations, you did in our last presentation when we were meeting with the Border Management Authority team, there was an intention for more injection of the budget allocation so that the set objectives are realized. And I think where the committee is concerned about the work that will be compromised for the set objective of the Border Management Authority. We have taken that into consideration. The intervention by the National Treasury and Department of Home Affairs into the financial position and the governance of government printing works, welcomed, and we'll monitor that, Deputy Minister. As you know that the committee has more interest in terms of the weaknesses, particularly as a result of the interministerial task team that dealt with the governance at the level of the government printing works. The loss of data is one of the areas that the Auditor General raised as the platform concern, and we as the committee will look on that as we move forward. We know that the Electoral Amendment Bill bring a major shift in terms of the governance and the operation at the IEC, particularly now that we're moving towards the 2024 national and provincial elections. The IEC have highlighted some of the shortcomings in terms of the financial support. We take note of the business case in interaction with the National Treasury. So overall, members of the committee, these are the issues we've raised, we've noted, and I think we must applaud all the work our entities, including the IEC, continue to respond to the issues that we've been doing well. We will then stand off the item, Deputy Minister, on behalf of the committee, will monitor all the work that we'll be doing. We know that they will be having a strategic workshop or session with your department, Government Printing Works, BMA, and the IEC, and to reflect on the issues that the committee has resolved on. As the CEO have indicated on the issue of the electronic voting, we are anticipating to conduct a study tour just to sort some experience in terms of other states, how they're running their this process, and at the interval we'll then have a workshop with the IEC to broadly deal with these issues. Want to thank all of you. We're going to stand off this item. We're also going to stand off the item of the minutes that it was on the agenda. We'll deal with that in our next committee meeting, the first thing before the formal committee meeting starts at 8:30 in our next committee meeting. I'm fully aware that members are preparing now to go to the sitting, and some will be traveling to the house for the sitting that is starting at 2 o'clock. Mr. Matonzi, is there any other matter?
Chairperson, is just to expand on what Justin said in relation to the strategic planning workshop. Last week, as we recall, I did make a submission, make an application to the Chief Whip and the House Chair for us to conduct that strategic planning workshop for the date of traveling on the 27th, and then leaving on the 31st of March. On Thursday, both the Chief Whip and the House Chair approved, but on Friday morning, I got an email that they are withdrawing the approval. There was no reason given. I have not even received the reason so far, Chair. So that's all from my side.
Well noted, Mr. Matonji. I think that's a matter between ourselves. We have since advised you on how you must interface with the office of the COC. And I thought that process we have engaged. Let's just deal with it outside the meeting. It means we have not carried the request we've requested you to do. Now that these other matters, we stand off. Members, thanks very much. Deputy Minister, Commissioners, Government Printing Works, and all colleagues who are in attendance. Thanks very much. Our meeting stands adjourned.